Hello, hello, hello. Sound check, sound check. Jeez. Let's see here.
Crossing the void, beyond the wall of worlds, and along the arc of time, dwell those not of our place or age. It is too easy
What's up,
to
Anna?
say that
I'm
there
trying
is
to get you in
darkness
here.
and there is light. It is too easy to say that there are two sides to every coin. The reality is far worse. For law flirts with
Says there are
tyranny.
two participants. Rich is
Chaos
having trouble
invites
with his own
freedom.
cam.
Evil consumes all
Listening
it
to
knows.
Chuck.
Good accepts suffering. And those in the middle,
All right, here you go.
they are worse, for they know nothing but self.
Oh, listening to Chuck. Yeah,
Codex
yeah, okay.
Infernum and the Codex
All right.
Exaltum, 2 source books that bring in-depth knowledge about
What's
beings
up, Tim?
of all
Enoch?
dispositions, from the farthest
Diana.
reaches of the heavens
Hello.
to the
Rich has
darkest
already tried
depths
logging
of
on. He has an issue with
Both
his
of these titles
autofocus
come
on
with
his
new,
camera.
full-color
Uh-oh.
art,
So he's
new
working on
creatures,
that.
new
Yeah,
powers
but
like
it
possession,
seems to
and
be a little bit
multitude of
iffy, but
information
I had to
providing lore,
quit it, and I
backgrounds,
quit Discord
names,
and
mechanics,
reset soon,
That's
and then it
bizarre.
worked.
and much more.
Yep. Well, it can be
These
issues.
incredible
Yeah, so
tomes
no
are
biggie.
filled with demons and
no
angels,
biggie.
devils, and celestials, unleashing the powers of good and evil, law and
does.
chaos on your
What's
table.
up, Jim? What's up
The
there, Jim?
Codices
What's up
Infernum
there?
and Exaltum,
Dale.
bringing creatures hallowed and
See everyone.
profane into your adventures. Pledge and share today. Trollord Games, join the fray.
Chuck is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. That's how mystical he is.
It's another one just like Tim. Yeah,
Yes.
in a way. Yeah.
But it looks like I may have a second micro session with Tim now on Friday morning. So we have one on Tuesday,
Oh.
and then we have another one on Friday because he's off that day, and a lot of his players
Am
are available. And I'm not working yet, so
Yeah, I've set my alarm so I get up early because it's yeah.
yeah, because 6 o'clock.
Well,
Start.
summer no problem because I get up really early, but
Right.
now it's more like winter time, so I don't get up that early. Not every day.
Okay. Here comes Mike. So Mike, Rich is having a little some camera issues he's working on.
Yeah, he's camera shy today.
Okay, good. Awesome. What will happen tonight? Demographics. Finally. You may be looking forward to this. You may not be. But we're doing it. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion.
Yep.
Here comes Rich again. Rich.
Hey guys, you hear me?
Hey,
Yeah, we
it
can hear
works.
But now I got no video.
Welcome. Well, at least we got audio. That's even more important than video today.
Ridiculous. I actually have my video going. Now it just decides not to work. Before, it kept zooming me in and out.
Do you have two webcams? You can switch from one to the other because if you switch and then back again, it usually works. That's my
Yeah.
issue.
Oh no, I only have one webcam. I'm
Okay. And try turn it on and off again a couple of times. and see. Or can you? Is it like grayed out so you can't turn it on at all?
Yeah, no, it's there. It's just showing that there's like no picture.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to stop
There,
video.
well, there's a background now.
There's my
Yeah.
background.
Mhm.
Start video.
There you go.
There you go. See,
Woohoo!
that's how you do it.
And we'll live with the autofocus.
Yeah, I can't
Well,
get
the autofocus is kind of
Yeah, don't
have-
move. Yeah, just
But you have some web settings somewhere you can turn that off.
Well, I used to be able to, but then Windows, in its brilliance, decided that the live cam.
But you also have a filter that blurs the background. That's what causes the issues.
That's why it's.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's probably in Zoom. So you need to turn that off.
Yeah. Right.
How's everybody tonight?
Good.
Good. Yeah.
What's up, Rethix?
I've been talking politics all afternoon, so I've been
No.
I'm happy.
Uh-oh.
I had lunch with congressmen and stuff. So yeah.
Oh, well, that's cool.
It was fun. Yeah.
That
The
sounds.
background is no longer blurred. Maybe that'll help.
There you go. No more autofocus. See?
Well,
Look at
Perfect.
That is a
Yeah.
genius.
Now you will be.
Awesome. So good evening. Hope to see
Good evening.
everyone
How's
come
everybody
into
doing?
this fun discussion. So finally talking demographics here. I got
Yeah.
the courage to finally take this on with everyone else. So
I think this is more of a for Anna than for anybody else.
Oh, exactly. It's a comfort Anna episode. We need to have them once every couple of months. Otherwise, I don't dare to come on here. So we
I
need to
don't know if it's
have
a
these.
Comfort Anna one. I think
Oh,
there's
yes,
other
it
people
is.
out there.
Yeah, there's probably more miserable people than me that need comforting from time to time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So
Well-
with Anna and Mike tonight, good evening to both of you. We have Rich
Thank you.
Diolia Longitalis on once again. Rich, welcome back.
Welcome, guys.
Welcome back.
Here, like
Thank
usual.
you so much for
Yes,
coming.
and you're looking mighty red there. It's like you're.
I always
festive.
wear a red shirt for you
Yes,
Mhm.
because I want to advertise my buddies in the Tilvanaut.
that's
Mhm.
very cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, where do we begin on this? So, this is a huge bone of contention topic
Mhm.
tonight.
Yep.
Why don't the three of you just say, what do you hope to get out of this discussion? We'll start with Mike, because Mike's the least confrontational, or just, so what do you hope to get out of this tonight, Mike?
Okay, yeah, so this is one of those topics that only Greyhawk fans talk about.
Yep.
No one ever talks about, the populations of Barovia or argues the difference between Symbian and Kalimshan. So, what's controversial about this? I don't know. We'll just see where it goes. It's definitely good if you've done your homework, I suppose. Otherwise, I just think it's going to be definitely a fact versus whatever discussion, and it's going to be a lot of fun trying to keep up with all the experts in the chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but that's good. So that's a good thing. We'll have some good input here. Because my input's can be very limited to just looking through the glossography and going, oh, there's the amount that's in Selene, right? And it's like, why are there halflings there, and why are there this and that? And it's just, there's a lot of whys, but beyond that, to me, it is what it is. But to others, it's important. So let's figure out where we can come to a consensus on this. So Anna, how about you?
For me, I think it's what demographics is one of these world building tools that, depending on your play style and your goals with your game and what kind of stories you tell, it's something that can be used and looked at as an asset. And I think it's important whether you want to use it or not. I think it's one of these things you should have a look at and see, is this for me and for my game group, or is it not, so to speak? And that's one of the key things, because demographics can be a wealth of inspiration and knowledge for your game, or it can be something like, what the heck do we need this for? We're not interested, throw it away. But if you haven't thought about demographics, I think you should listen in and think, because it might be for you, surprisingly, or it might not be for you. And I think one of the key things, is to emphasize different ways you can use demographics and think of it in order to make your game interesting and your world building interesting. And depending on what stories you want to tell and what kind of game you want to run, it might be vital, or it might be simply not interesting at all. That's what I hope we can get out of these 2 hours.
Excellent. So, Rich, you seem to have done the most work on this. Am I correct?
Yes. So as part of
Mhm.
the Office of Purity, we are counting the Sul around the Flaness. Go around. That's our main goal. Now
Yep.
you notice that the Bakluni, normally we label them with the rest of the humanoids, but for tonight's episode, we give distinct numbers for Bakluni, independent of orcs and half orcs.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Mhm.
What do you hope to get out of this discussion?
What do I hope to get out of the discussion? Well, basically, I just want to see what your opinions are. I like demographics. Like I'm with Anna. I like demographics because as a DM, it kind of drives the storyline if used
Mhm.
properly.
Yep.
So you could ask yourself, well, when your characters are traveling from village to village, what are the chances that there's going to be an ankeg that attacks them? Well, if the town itself or the region itself has hundreds of thousands of people, they would have killed all the ankegs by now. Whereas if it's sparsely populated, you could put a lot of creatures everywhere, and it makes sense, right?
Yep.
And that's what I like about demographics.
Mhm. Yep. I put down 2 examples of extreme when you need high demographics and when you need low demographics, so to speak. And the first example, if you want your game to have epic battles with big armies fought with thousands on each side and stuff, these aren't coming from nowhere, so to speak. But let's say they are mostly undead creatures. That means that you have had to have high demographics, at least previously in history, because someone needs to dig up all these bones in order to animate them and then use them in battle. So that becomes interesting, meaning if there's been like an ancient civilization here a few hundred years earlier, that means that you can have a big undead battle, but you can't have a big battle with living creatures because there are not many around. So then big battles require high population numbers. Otherwise, these armies wouldn't exist of whatever creature it is, so to speak. And the opposite, if you want to have a wilderness crawl across thousands of kilometers of sparse wilderness with weird monsters will roam, and you want the creatures to be far away from magic shops, and you don't want them to be able to get any supply whatsoever, that requires really low demographics and only a few people per square mile, if any at all. And so that's how I think you should look at demographics, meaning how many inhabitants do your games and stories need or require in order to function, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
And also, how important are your your players, right? If your players
Yep.
are one and if let's say they're 8th level, for example, use D&D terms. Well, if they're
Yep.
8th level characters, if there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these 8th level characters, you're not too important. But if you're the only 8th level character for
Yep.
next 100 miles radius, you feel pretty important, like
Yep.
people will come to you for help.
Yep.
So let me gosh, I'm not trying to be the negative guy here.
No, please.
So
Yep.
No, but you succeed even if you don't.
I use common sense, but
Yeah.
I have never not placed a creature that I've wanted to place somewhere, which makes sense in my game
Mhm.
based on the population being too high in the area. Okay, does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. But you
Yeah.
won't but you look at Altamira, right? You're not going to put a red dragon within 2 miles of Altamira.
no, of course not. That's common
not?
sense.
Common
Mhm.
That's
sense.
common
Yep.
sense, right?
Yep.
Yes,
So you are kind of living demographics,
Mhm.
right.
but you're coming from a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's also a term that is used more and more in fantasy world building and sci-fi world building. Mean, are you a hard world builder or a soft world builder? Meaning, hard world builder, you go down and you put down the numbers, how many people live there, you make the map, you put the whatever lives where, and so on and so forth. Meaning you spec out the world first and put down hard things. There's a river there, there's a forest, and so on and so forth. That's the hard world build. And then you try to create the story within the parameters you put up. And then you have the soft world builders, meaning, okay, we come up with an awesome story and I let my players through. And if I need a forest or river, there is one across. If they run through the forest, they find a river, and so on. And the world simply, what the world looks like is dictated from the stories. That's soft world building.
I
And
had a
both-
feeling that's what I was
yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah. So
Like
there
you
are,
got
and there are
facts
issues.
and you got story.
Yeah. And there are issues with both of them. If you're a hard world builder, all of a sudden to squeeze in the history and a storyline within all these numbers and fine details might be really, really difficult, because any story will run up against hard facts that you kind of come up before, and all of a sudden it doesn't make sense. And the soft world builder,
Okay.
once the players go back the other way around and you realize that, damn, now I need to remember all these little things that came in, and this river that I created all of a sudden because I needed one for them to cross, that river needs to come from somewhere, needs to go somewhere. If the player starts investigating it, then I have to fill it up. So both comes with problems, so to speak. And it's a scale. It's not one or the other. We are all on a scale of more soft or harder or softer when it comes to world building.
Okay.
I'll give you an example of a bad DM I had at one point. So we're playing, and I think we were 6 or 7 players, and we get to a village, and we say, "How big's the village?" He goes, "Okay, it's about 1,000 people live in this village." It's like, okay. And I say, "Okay, we're gonna get an inn for the night." And he goes, "Well, which inn are you gonna go to?" So we're like, "Well, how many choices do we have?" He goes, "Oh, there's about 15 inns." And we're like,
Yeah.
That's a lot
15
for
inns
1,000.
in a village of 1,000 people. So we're going, "Oh my God, this is like this is some sort of college town party house where everybody's drunk all
Yeah.
the time." Like, so we're making fun of the town the whole time, right? We call it a party village, right? Because so we'd be going bar hopping, and the DM didn't realize what he was saying when he was just throwing out these numbers. So demographics does have a
Okay.
little bit of an effect on something like this,
Yeah.
right?
And it's also very much up to what your players want, so to speak. Some players, you just want cool monsters to slay and treasure to add to your character sheet, and screw the rest, so to speak. And some players are like, "Oh, we're in here to I want to have a believable world to interact with, and anything that goes against, and I'm for all the minutiae, and I want to have good stories, and I want to immerse, I want to be able to see what mushrooms grow 20 feet into the forest, and so on and so forth. I want to know every detail, so to speak, and in between. Those are the kind of the extremes. But and then it's up to us DMs. What do we want to provide, and for whom, so to speak?
Fair enough. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's go to the start here, shall we?
Yeah.
So here's the start. 1980. You get this great glossography. You come down here, and I'm just going to go to a couple examples, particularly, and I'm assuming, Rich, that these numbers are so under Great
Yeah.
Kingdom.
Now remember, in those days, this was a wargaming predominantly
Yep.
system.
Good
Mhm.
point.
So these are able-bodied people, of which you could pull troops out of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
even certain if you consider women as able-bodied in those days.
So
So
you're
this would be even just able-bodied men between the ages of, let's say, 16 to like 35 or something, right?
so these are not total. You're saying these are not total population numbers.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Because I think you said 10% of the population are able to be recruited to be fighters or something like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
There's some
exactly
provisions
what I
like
read.
that. Yep.
So obviously you're not going to have 60-year-olds and
Yeah. I think that went for the 83 box set, had the same caveat, I think, in the numbers.
So you're saying that this number is Greyhawk actually has 700,000 people in it? Like it says
That's
population 70,000 plus total, including surrounding
well,
area.
now we're coming into the
Oh,
intricacies
Oh,
of
okay.
demographics, because the number of able-bodied potential fighters can vary a lot. If you have a young population, meaning you can have a very young, if half your population is 18 or in your teenage years, from like 18 to 25, then you might have, if you have, let's say there is 10,000 listed in the population there, that might be half the population, or it might be a tenth of the true population, depending on demographics. So that's the tricky bit with demographics. There's more than just the number. It's the how big, how many elderly people. It's a society that is dying out, hardly no young, or is it just a bunch of people in their teens or 20s and hardly anyone older? Or is it maybe only women? You had a major war and most men have died out or something. So there's more to it than just the prime numbers when it comes to that.
yeah, you look at what Alderon is saying, like 5 other people, and it really depends. If you got an able-bodied, he might be him and his wife. Does his wife count? If his wife counts as able-bodied, now you got 2. If they have 4 kids, you have 2 able-bodied for 4 children. but maybe he has some elderly parents who are infirm living with him.
Yeah.
So now you have 2 able bodies for 4 children and 2 elderly. So it's 2 to 6, right? So it's you multiply able bodied by 3
Yeah.
or by 6 if you don't count women, right? So you get into these you clear out the numbers a little bit that way.
Yeah.
In
And
the LGG, I think they went with total population.
yeah. And that
Oh,
is
no,
simply up
okay,
to
let
you
me
as a
get
DM how you want to
LGG
interpret the numbers. You simply fill out these blanks and take a note that the true population is this, yep, or
Okay.
that, yep.
So in LGG, you think the numbers are actual?
LGG, I think they specifies the total.
Yeah, they're specified, and that's the thing is that
There we go.
yeah. And the interesting, I took the numbers from City of Greyhawk and the City of Divers over the 83 box set from the Ashes and the LG Gazetteer, and those numbers don't differ that much, except if you start taking that into account, that it's able-bodied people in 83 and full population in LG. And from the Ashes, I'm not sure which it was, but that means that then you get some really interesting results.
I don't think it's stated, Rex Solis, in the original.
No, it is.
Yeah,
It
it's
is?
just the demi-humans and humanoids.
It is. It is stated for able-bodied.
Okay.
I don't know if it was in the. I don't know if it was in the glossography, if it was
Yep.
in
Okay.
the 83 guide, or even in a Dragon magazine article.
Yeah, and in LG you get percentages for different demi-humans and humanoids and stuff. You get like percentage of halflings, elves, and stuff. So
Well, if you
Okay.
don't have Dragon Magazine subscription, then that would be no use.
yeah,
In the Dragon magazine, there was actually something that actually said when you have the population of a town, you have like 1d6 villages, feeder villages around it, of which they have
Hmm.
X amount
Yep.
of people, and so this had all been worked out.
Okay.
So once you start reading numbers, it's interesting that they are there, but they are not directly that useful, and they don't say that much because it's only a small part of the whole truth. So there is a lot of leeway you can, or you're required as a DM to. So if you want to have these numbers and start looking into them, you have to do a lot of world building. If you just look at the bare bone material in the Greyhawk, even Living Greyhawk doesn't offer much. A few more sentences and a few more numbers, but that's it. But if you look at the numbers from the City of Greyhawk, the population in 83 box set for the city is 58,000. And this is, we assume, able-bodied men primarily.
It's
or
not
at
much
least,
more in the Living Greyhawk.
exactly. It's 66 and a
7,000.
half from the Ashes, and it's 69 and a half in
Right.
Living Greyhawk. So
Okay.
so that's interesting. So if you interpret the numbers as the number of population, that the population have gone up a little bit over the years in the various products, so to speak. And since they span, what is it, like 10 years or something like that, from 76 to 85. So, and that's a reasonable change of population over war and a decade of time. But if you then interpret the numbers and say, okay, but the 83 box set number is only able-bodied soldiers, even if you include women, then the number should be at least almost double the population. So the population should be like 120,000 in order to or at least 100,000 in order to give 58,000 able-bodied soldiers material. And that means that the population has gone down significantly in the Living Gazetteer, if you interpret the numbers that way. And I don't think the designers intended that. So it's I'm not, and I definitely wouldn't advise against using these hard numbers as hard numbers. It's more like a guide for how you want to interpret and make your version of the City of Greyhawk. Diverse, identical differences, basically.
Okay.
And there's I believe there's a mistake in the LGG. Go to Nyrond,
Yeah.
the North Kingdom. So Gary and I were talking about this, and we had a good chuckle over it.
Yeah.
There's Nyrond.
Look at the population of the North Kingdom, and then look at the population of Nyrond.
Here's Nyrond. Well, I'm at Nyrond. Nyrond has where's the total population on this stuff?
Right after major towns. Going
provinces.
Going down?
2.6 million. right?
yeah,
All right, now
there it is.
North Kingdom.
Right? That's 2.618,200, right?
Yeah.
2.618,200.
North Kingdom, same.
What are the odds that they have right down to the 200 people, the
Yeah.
exact same population?
Yeah.
So what Gary and I think is that they copied the template, the top part of
Right,
the,
they didn't
Yeah.
fix it. Yeah.
the
And
country.
then no one ever filled in
They
anything on
forgot to
the.
change that number.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
catch.
So
But
then we
they-
pulled the
yeah.
so we pulled the French LGG.
Hmm.
I was able to get a hold of the French LGG, and they have different numbers.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, so in the French LGG,
Which
let me see.
which
Yeah,
is
so the French LGG has Nyroned at 2.781,800 numbers. So it's got more people in Nyron than the North Kingdom by
so
100,000.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to see these, but like, which one of these should we go to first, Rich? Do you want to go to? I got
Oh
three of
wow,
them.
okay.
What was
You wanna
the
jump
what was
straight into
the
countries?
North Kingdom in the LG French? What
It
was
was the
that
same
then?
number. So the North Kingdom was 2.618,200,
Right.
Yeah.
but in the Nyron went up by 263.
Very interesting.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Very
Yeah, because
interesting.
they're
Strangely enough,
reasonably the same size. So yeah.
the other one that went up was Bissell. Bissell actually went down by 80. I don't know why.
80 or 80? Just 80.
80, 80.
Well, you know,
And,
rounding error.
Dutch Reversed went up by 30,000.
John Blue Box,
I know.
welcome.
Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome in. We're doing this is a demographics of Greyhawk discussion. So and we also got a giveaway for one compilation and one adventure for the winner tonight, as we had a really nice level 4 hype train just now. Good to see you all. Welcome. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a discussion on population. Sorry, Rich. Go ahead. My apologies
Yeah,
here.
so I was just saying, so the LGG in French has what Gary and I believe the more accurate numbers. I think
And,
the LGG French caught the mistakes that were done in the English one.
and you've done your homework here, because that's here on this massive spreadsheet.
Yeah, so this okay, so this is interesting. So you got that one? You start with that one? All right.
Well, whichever one you want to start with. You want to start with the other one or this one?
No, let's start with that one.
Okay.
Okay, so the interesting thing, so go to the first tab on the Excel. I'll walk everybody through what I did here.
So go all the way back to this.
No, the first worksheet, there's like 3 worksheets on this thing.
Oh, are there? I
Yeah,
just got
go
populations on this.
all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah, let me enable editing. It says revised population.
Oh, no, you
Oh,
don't
there we
need
go.
to-
Area?
No, go to area.
Area.
First thing I did
Okay.
was you got that, okay,
What's up,
was I
Grace?
grabbed this map and I found a tool online where if you do a contour of an area, no matter how complex the area is, it actually calculates the area within that area.
Oh,
Within that.
cool. For
They didn't have to
size.
count this. They didn't have to count the hexes and say this is like a third of a hex and blah blah. So I found some sort of graphical tool that allows you to contour a section of any picture, and
Oh,
it'll tell you the area within that contour. Let's say.
Cool.
So I did that for every country. I did it for the woodlands, like the Adri forest, the swamps, the mountain ranges, and everything else. So that was the first step I did. So you have the size in centimeters squared, which is the tool gave it to me in centimeters squared.
Right.
Then I did one hex, and I said the hex in centimeters squared is whatever it is. And then I did a ratio, and I multiplied all, and those are the areas of all the countries in kilometers squared and in square miles.
Wow.
For did it by country, did it by woodland, did it to et cetera, et cetera. I just played around with a whole bunch of stuff.
Crazy.
All right. So if anybody wants this Excel sheet, guys, check with me on Discord, on the Cannon Fire Discord, private message me, and I'll send it to you. All right, so that was the first step I did. Then if you go to the second tab, so then I started having some fun. Once I calculated all the areas. All right, then I went to this one. This is the density. So I went through the LGG numbers, looked at the area, and then I came up with a density in people per square kilometers and people per square miles. And that's where I started getting a little bit interesting, because the most populous country is Ekbir. Ekbir is the densest country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Turned out to be Ekbir. I would have thought it would be something else, but
No,
Right.
but it makes sense. It's in a good climate
counting
zone
cities, yeah.
and fairly stable. Don't have too squabbly neighbors, and they haven't had any major world wars or anything up there for quite a while. So that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm talking by far, and like 3 times Alyssa, you know, and 3 times Keelan.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a
I
big-
think those are both Alyssa, Nyron,
So-
Furyundi, and so on should have higher numbers in my opinion.
So, Rich,
Yeah.
what's the
Ernst. Yeah.
what's the most dense state in the U.S.?
Oh, I
Population.
don't know, but I know in medieval Europe, France was around 20 or something in those
Here.
days.
It's Jersey.
Yeah.
It's New
Delaware,
It's New
New
Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah, where I
What's
live.
Yeah,
the-
you don't have like a big backcountry with a lot of wilderness or big
Well, in
forests and
south
stuff.
we do, but north is so densely packed, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What's the
that's
density? What's the density in New Jersey per mile?
70,
70 people per square mile, right?
something like that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Ekbeer is only half as dense as New Jersey.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But
Yeah.
they said in
less.
medieval
John?
France had some of the highest numbers, and some of the highest numbers that could be supported in medieval Europe was roughly up to 100 people per square mile. That was what agriculture could the most fertile parts, like and that was parts you normally in France, some of the Low Countries, parts of Germany and southern British Isles were the numbers, and there were certain small areas of Spain and Italy, northern Italy, that the Po Valley and stuff, they could support that. Most of the rest of the Europe didn't have a chance, and then you had other parts of the world like China and the Inca Empire and stuff. They had similar numbers, but those were small areas out of the vast areas they controlled, so to speak.
Yeah.
That had 100 people per square mile, which is not that much, so to speak, especially if you, because they were not across Europe, not even across France, but in populated areas, you could be up to that in density.
So here's
So
here's a
Did
question.
you get the third one, Jay?
Okay.
Look at the third tab. That's when I started having some fun.
Yeah.
So the third tab is I came up with 2 different methods. I said, all right, method 1 is every country I gave it 4 factors: stability, fertility, and the environment.
Okay.
And then I gave a special factor, like for example, our buddies in Almore, because it was completely raised, it has a special factor, basically a 50% top. Because no matter how good it is, it just got raised to the ground.
Yeah, it's like in the real world, they say that they're normal countries, and then there are Argentina, and then there's Japan. That's what they say in economics, that they're all the normal countries in Argentina. So in Flanny's demographics, is they're normal countries, and then there's Almore. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
there's a special ones, right? So what I did, that's method 1, and then method 2 is I turned around and said, okay, how many people do we want per square kilometer? So it takes about, I said, how much of the country percentage you want? So as a GM, you want to say, okay,
Yeah.
I want to have only 15% of the country tamed, or 2% or 3% or whatever. So you set that percentage. And then I said, okay, based on those 2 factors, right? Because I said, I like points of light, so I don't like big numbers. So I wanted to put, lower numbers, up to 20%. I don't want to go much higher than 20%.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, so then I go to the right, and then I say, okay, with those numbers, method 1 gives you a suggested density, and then method 2 as well. And then it says how many people should be in the country. And so then I start running statistics, and I start comparing them, suggested those 2 different methods. I compare those 2, then I compare to the LGG population, then I run statistics. And this is something people can play with if they want to borrow that Excel sheet. It's on the same thing.
Interesting.
Yep.
And then it could tell you, how many people do you want in that country based on those 2 different things.
Yep.
So the LGG is not that far off, to be honest, if you look
No,
at it. I mean,
exactly.
it's close enough, but it's
Yep.
some places, but it's reasonable.
So what is the total population of the Flanders?
28 million humans and demi-humans.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially at the top. So
28
they're,
million. And it's the
talking
size of the United States?
Roughly, it's a bit bigger than United
So it's the size
States.
of Canada?
Almost, yeah. It depends on how the projection is done. and I made an estimate that makes it slightly bigger, but it simply depends if you it's the projection of the northern, meaning the Solonian Peninsula can be enormous.
Right,
depending
We're
on
just
if
talking.
you-
Yeah, we're talking about the
Yeah,
base area.
yeah. So it depends on how you interpret the Darlene map, so to speak. That's the big issue.
It's
so to
bigger than
speak.
Europe.
Yes.
Not counting
yeah.
all of Russia. It's
No,
bigger
no,
than Europe.
if you count like European Russia from Urals and
Right.
westward, so to speak.
It's
So
bigger
yeah,
in
it's
Europe.
big. Yeah,
and
it's bigger. Yeah.
probably Europe had. I mean, maybe Europe is still declining. I don't know after all the wars, but
No, Europe has gone up
has it gone way up?
significantly.
'Cause a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
it's gone
countries are
way up.
going-
Yeah, Europe
Germany
today
and
has
UK have
Europe
negative
yeah.
population.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but most of them have had immigration enough to keep up the numbers roughly. But it's going down to about 1 million. But that's recently. That's the last 20, 30 years. 650 million today. In medieval times, I think it was somewhere around 50, 60 million. So at tops. So Flanice is not as is less populated. If you take these numbers, a lot less, but half or a third compared to medieval Europe. So there is a way more wilderness if you take these numbers and a reasonable estimate of the area, so to speak.
I think it's cool in a fantasy setting because you want to make Greyhawk.
I agree. Right. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
But getting back to Canada, if you think about it, right? If it's the area of Canada, 28 million is the population of Canada when we were younger, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, the Flaniss is as dense and populous as Canada, which is not much. You have a couple of big cities, and you have a whole bunch of cities and towns along the border with the U.S., and the rest is empty.
Ratsko brings up a good point, though. They didn't have orcs running around.
Yeah, and dragons and stuff. So and Blower Rugby, you make a good point. That's the heat maps. That's one of the reasons I'm making GIS, because you can make population heat maps. I even have every settlement I put in GIS, I can put in the population number, and that means that, and then you can just put in the number of the percentage of the population that lives outside the settlements, and then you get country and region and so on heat maps that you can do easy. So that's one of the purposes with GIS mapping.
It's interesting.
Yep.
So Rich, what do you glean from this information on these methods that you've done?
So what I do is I look at this as a points of light campaign. So the Flaniss, if you use the numbers, it really is a points of light. And then what I did was I added, I believe it's on this one. If you scroll down, no, maybe it's the second one. One second. No, okay. So my other Excel sheet, I actually started playing around. I started playing around with the other one, which twists it a different way.
That's the other whole doc.
The other Excel sheet, yeah.
This one.
Yeah. So this one I went through the LGG, and I took the percentage I divided by race. And I consider the Baclunia race separate from the orcs in this spreadsheet.
Okay.
So you divide it across, and then I said, okay, I don't like the numbers so much. So I went to the bottom, and I started putting what I would guess. Those are what I call guesses.
Right. Okay.
I started putting elves in the Vestvi that are not in the Marklands. I put dwarven realms in the mountains. I put gnomish realms in some of the hills.
That aren't mentioned.
They're mentioned, but there was no numbers. So I kind of cranked the numbers up to make it more reasonable.
Yeah.
Because what I want to do at the end of it is I want to hit certain numbers. I said, okay, as a field, I want to get that the elves, gnomes, and dwarves and all this were a little bit more than what they had in the LGG. So I have, for example, dwarves at about 1 million, elves at 1.5 million, and so I kind of cranked those two races up a little bit by adding those realms. The gnomes are at 700,000.
So they do.
So so I played around with it a little bit just to see what I could do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to get to that.
Do you think there needs to be more elves?
No, I think when you get to 1.5 million elves compared to the 21 million humans, that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe even high. I don't need more elves. That's true. I think that's reasonable too. to have it
Because
like
by
that.
the crazy living Greyhawk gazetteer breakdown, then you end up with things like 200,000 elves and Alyssa and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's way too many.
But
I think they're just misappropriated.
Like
correct.
Grandwood and
yeah,
all those
yeah,
places where they're just not doing. Yeah.
yeah. But Living Greyhawk had the problem in a way that every realm needed a little bit of population of everything that players could play. So you need a halfling population, you needed a half orc population, you need, and so on and so forth. And that means that every realm that was a separate area in Living Greyhawk needed to have all the building blocks, so it became a mini setting, and that is cool when you play in there, but it also takes away the differences and makes all of them have the same problem, so to speak. And I love multiculti, but in my fantasy world, I'm a little bit more like a purist. The elves should maybe not be everywhere. You shouldn't have 2% elves in every realm, for instance, just because the player characters need to be.
So I went
But
back to my three third edition books, Anna, and in the DM guide, it had a section on demographics, and it had for world building, and it
yeah,
like tables and things. And they had it broke down to isolated, mixed, and integrated nations. And then they had a percentage breakdown. So an isolated breakdown would be 96% human. A mixed would be 79% human, and integrated would be like 37% of whatever. So not surprisingly, Living Gazetteer, which came out during third edition, uses this model. So you'll see throughout the book humans 79% over and over and over.
Yeah.
With all the other races, various tweaks here and there. Some moved up the list, some down the list, slight tweaks, but that's how you end up with elves in every nation, dwarves in every nation.
And that and it's only one dimension. And another one that I think we need to start at least putting into our minds when we start thinking of demographics as usability for gaming is that now we talked about demographics in the big picture. We talked about the setting numbers, meaning how many critters, humans, and others does it live in the whole of the Flannies, in the whole setting. And then you have each country, but demographics in that those things are more esoteric. It's kind of fun when you put down the notes of each country, but it's not really useful for gaming in any sense. But demographics, you can put them down in smaller increments too. So then you have the settlement version, and now it's starting to get really useful, so to speak, meaning like I think Rich example, meaning how many inns should you have in a village or settlement with 1,000 people. Now you're getting into useful numbers for hands-on world building for the next session planning. But even further, I think you can go down to what I would call the neighborhood model, so to speak. And a neighborhood is somewhere around from 60 to 200 individuals, meaning the area that the immediate area you will adventure in. So whether that is a goblin cave, whether it is a neighborhood in a big city or whatever it is, so to speak. But the area where you can have enough NPCs, monsters, and people and so on that the players have a reasonable chance of encounter them again, remembering them and stuff. Your local neighborhood, whether that is for a session or for a whole campaign. But I think that neighborhood and the size of that neighborhood is important. And then you have the other factor, meaning is this neighborhood an isolated island out in the wilderness with hardly anyone coming more than like Jotsplat up in nowhere, meaning there's like two convoys, one come in the spring and another one comes in the fall. They're like a base in the Antarctic. Or is it a downtown quarter in the city of Greyhawk or Divers or Radagast City, where you can just walk a few feet and you're in the next little bubble of community, so to speak. And that's where I think demographic is really interesting, meaning in your city block, meaning is there an orc underground, so to speak, or half orcs that run something in the basement, or do you have like were rats in the sewers, so to speak? And these kind of demographics, and how do these things function inside, and how do the rest of the world affects that the little settlement or area, adventuring area that you are kind of trying to build as a DM. That's where demographics become hands-on. And when you want to build armies for that big fight you want to have at the end of the campaign, that's where I think demographics, at least for me, is really important. Because if I want these things in my game, I have to build the world that so these things make sense. I build it in opposite, meaning in the real world, population numbers come from the hard facts, meaning how fertile is the soil and how deadly is the politics, meaning how many wars have you fought, etc. Those things and the culture around sexuality and marriage and stuff like that, that determines your demographics. But in a fantasy world, you can do the opposite. You can simply say, I want to have this world. I want to big battles. I want some dragons that comes in, and I want cool things in the sewers, etc. And then you build the demographics that fits those stories. So you basically do it in reverse from when you analyze the real world. But I still think in demographics is still useful, so to speak.
So my question, I guess to all of you, but to Rich in particular, when the thing came out with the DM with the 15 ends and 1,000, like I never have ever, for example, taken the village of Hamlet and counted how many people were there. Have you? Right? I don't know. Is there 100? Is there 500? I don't know. Right? So.
But you know, there's not 7,000.
What's that?
No, there's not 7,000.
Right. But like, where is the line between this makes sense, this doesn't make? You understand what I'm saying?
It depends on what your attitude is to hard versus soft world building. You're somewhere on the slight soft side, I would say, right. Not completely soft, but on the softer side. And I'm much more on the hard side without going to anal about the numbers, so to speak. I wouldn't put up a spreadsheet, but when I envision it, I sit down and start thinking, okay, are we 500-ish or are we 1,000-ish? And start dialing down the numbers, because I'm like, okay, I want one in and I want like roughly what I want, and then I work out the numbers roughly within 100 or so.
Third edition, I think, was trying to go the hard way, because one of the other things they did in their city descriptions was they give a hard cap on what value of items you could acquire. And like what the total resources of a town was. So you can just roll in a town and
Pathfinder Ultimate Campaign is another good example of a great book for hard world builders.
So here, Jamie, if I give you an example of how I used it.
Yeah, please. That's great. So
I'll give you an example. So my players wanted to do a adventure in Firyundi, where they started off as like kids of peasants, like 16-year-old kids. One was like a farmer, one was one was a craftsman and whatnot. And they want to start off in this small village in the backwaters of Firyundi. And they want to grow. So I decided I would do the whole campaign in this small little province of Firyundi. So I found Littleburg, and I went a little bit somewhere to the right of it, below Pantarn in that area. And I said, okay, so this small little fiefdom will consist of 8 little villages around a central forest.
Okay.
So I put those 8 little villages. And then I said, okay, so how many people will this thing hold? Well, I said, well, if all of the province of Littleburg has X amount of people, and that's in the Marklands.
Yep.
I said, that province of Littleburg might have 8 different baronies. This is one of the baronies, so it have roughly 1/8, but then I put it a little bit lower than 1/8 because I said it's one of the smaller baronies. So I said, okay, this whole barony would have only X amount of people. I don't know, let's say 30,000 people. I forget the exact number. I said I got 30,000 people to play with. That's it. That's all. And I got 10 villages. So my villages will be. So I made one bigger village, which was the capital village, and I mean the smaller ones. And then I said, okay, that forest is going to have a bunch of wood elves. And there's a story behind why this magical forest exists in the middle of Firyundi. And I put a couple of hills there and whatnot, and that was the population.
Right.
And then I said,
okay,
right there. So you see Littleburg. So picture a little bit up and to the right along.
Yeah, it's like this area here.
Yeah, it's
It's
small.
wide
little-
open. There's nothing on the map.
Nothing there. So I put it right there. So, and it's close up to
Hey,
Littleburg that if they needed to go to Littleburg to trade, they could. If they needed to go to Freeborough, they could go there and Pantarn. So there was big towns in the area that they go to trade if they really needed to when they got higher level. But I said, let's do mostly, yeah. So I put them right where the N is, give or take, let's say, for Yundi. Okay. And so I put them along that road that, I put the few of them along the road. And so then I said, okay, so let's play around with this. Now, the nice thing about it, I said, okay, if I only have this many people, I put a couple of high-level people, a couple of mid-level people, and then the rest are low-level. So when you're starting as a nobody, everybody else is more powerful than you. But as they were getting more and more powerful in this area, they started becoming the most powerful people in that barony, right? They could see their progression through the ranks. So the people that they were in awe of at the beginning of the campaign, they caught up to as they went along.
Yep.
And so, and then I knew, okay, if I only have 30,000 people, I might only have 400 fighters in the whole village, in the whole barony. And so when I did goblins and monsters and whatnot of invading, and the player characters had a heavy influence on the fights because they knew each village could only produce maybe 20 people, and that's it to fight. So having 5 or 6 fighter characters in that village, backing up with only 20 guys with the pitchforks and spears, it's a big power swing. So the characters really felt valuable because the demographics were there, and it showed them that they were becoming powerful, and they had a goal, and they visualized it, and it made sense.
But they wouldn't be as powerful if they were in Greyhawk City.
Correct.
Got it.
Because there you have way more people to compete
Yeah,
with.
okay.
So
It's
that's
like
where
if-
demographics is. That's where demographic plays around, right? So the guys in
Yep.
Greyhawk City, he has a longer climb to do. So as a
Yep.
player character, you're like, oof, there's a lot of big guys who could smite me in this town. So it's gonna take me a while
Yeah.
to have my name. And they
Yeah.
might say, you know what, I'm gonna move. I'll move to somewhere else because this is too tough. I want to be the big fish in
Yeah.
a small pond
Mhm.
instead of a small
Yeah.
fish in a big
It's
pond.
like in the real world. If you want to be the best of something, it's easier in your local area. It's better to be in a small town in the Midwest than it is to be in downtown Manhattan, whether you have several million or like in a big city where you have millions of people to compete with.
So
Yeah.
that is awesome and makes a lot of sense. I think Anna will help me with this. My fear, personally, is I'm making a city with 10,000, maybe 10 to 15,000 people in Altamira, fleshing it out.
Mhm.
I don't want to have too many tickling feathers. You know what I'm saying, Anna? Or I don't want to have too
Mhm.
many, theater houses or,
Yeah, then you start have to thinking in demographics, meaning like
Right,
you have
right.
to think like a business person doing a business analysis. If I'm going to set up shop in Altamira,
right.
how many could they support in my line of business, so to speak?
That's
look-
How big of
so
a population do you?
go ahead,
yeah.
go,
Really
Rich.
running a campaign in Radagast City. I have one theater in Radagast City because I figure Radagast City, if they do a run for 6 months on the same play, well, the population of
Not at all.
Radagast City, 50,000
much.
people. If they fit
Okay.
300-400 a night, and they do maybe 300-400 a week, within 6 months, everybody in Radagast City has seen this play.
Yeah.
They would have to switch up so there's really no use to have multiple theaters because you just wouldn't.
But take it like this: the city of London and New York have 10 times more theaters per capita than any other city on the planet,
Yeah.
because people will travel from all over the world to go to these places just to see a show in London West End or some in New York, so to speak.
Right.
These
Greyhawk
cities
only
are
has 2.
culture. Exactly. You can have the same thing in Altamira. I mean, you might have 3 tickled feather might have 3 competitors in Altamira.
I was just as an example.
Not because people in Altamira are so keen on going to the tickled feather or one of its competitors, but the people from near and
Right.
far will
Okay.
go there once or twice or 3 times a year to these establishments because they're nowhere else to be found. Altamira might be the only city within 500 miles where it's legal or peaceful enough or prosperous enough for these things to happen. The same thing with temples, meaning you can have a city like Critwall have way more temples per capita than other similar cities across on the Furundian side, because it's been a place where believers have been flocking for hundreds of years. And Veluna City and Mitrik the same way, because the archclericy have a much higher per capita density of clerics and temples than Furundi have on its side. And then maybe Belvoir is trying to boost those numbers or something. And City of Greyhawk probably has more gambling clubs than Hardby, maybe way more or fancy restaurants and stuff like that, because rich people will go to Greyhawk just to dine and game and have fun.
Okay.
And spend money. So the meaning how isolated you are from the rest of the world demographics is another important bit. You can't, each thing doesn't work in isolation unless, but for some reason they might, because they are isolated, or they are political, cultural, magical, or other reasons for things to be isolated. And you can come up with some cool things like this in a fantasy world for that you can screw with these numbers, because the odd one out is the interesting, but you need to have reasonable, interesting reasons why there is a weird extra number of temples or a lack of something or an abundance of something else.
Yeah, so going with what Delduath was talking about in chat. So the reason I put a theater in Radagast is because there was a module I found called Leisure Domain that I wanted to put my players through, and it wasn't a theater. So I put one in the Radagast, and that's why it's there.
Yeah. And you can simply say, well, population love to have theaters. You might have a number of tiny amateur theaters because they are a bunch of people that adhere to they all the Dameron worshippers, and they love to have it. So that means that they have double the amount of alehouses, and they love to hang out and do sketches for each other. But they are just amateur, low quality stuff where people get drunk and drum up shit, so to speak, and not fancy high culture. And you go to Divers or Greyhawk, it's the other way around.
So I'm going to ask not a thought-provoking question, not a argumentative question.
Yeah.
Has there been, let's go back, I don't care when the publication was made, but has there been a town like Saltmarsh or Lane or somewhere it just doesn't make sense?
Yeah, well, I remember seeing the Saltmarsh that came out. There was one in the Dungeon Master Guide, the DMG2, I believe, the Saltmarsh. I had to take that. I had to play with the numbers. The numbers.
Yeah, there's a difference.
I had to.
Yeah.
You're talking about the later third edition one, not the early U1,
Yeah.
right?
That's
okay.
It was a DMG. I think it was called Dungeon Master Guide 2, third edition.
Right.
There was a whole section on an example of a town, and they used Saltmarsh there. And I took that, and then I took the one from the actual Saltmarsh modules and whatnot. I had to play around with it, and I made it work. But it was you had to adjust it.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that area not far from Saltmarsh, there is the city of Redshore that I think is a living Greyhawk edition. And to me, that the placement doesn't really make that much sense, so to speak. It's on a tiny island off the coast. That is not unheard of, but from a perspective of communication with the rest and to be able to cultivate enough food and stuff, I think it will be more sense to put it on the mainland where you can support it more than if you put it on a tiny little island off the coast and so on, especially since it seems like the Yavan River doesn't seem to have that much traffic going in and out of it. So I wonder who goes to and provide Redshore with all the. It seems to be a weird place to put thousands of people who need to import their food, so to speak, because it must be really expensive to take it from somewhere else just to import it in there. It would be one thing if it would make sense if it were a hub in an area where there is lots of trade going in every direction. It would be perfect to have a little stopover where people can resupply their ships and repair things and change crews and stuff like that.
But Anna, isn't it strategically placed for a fortress at one point to defend. It's the southern tip of Keelan to defend against the
Yeah,
Sea Princes, and a city grew around it.
a
Right?
fortress won't have
That's
a
a
high population.
possibility. Yep.
Okay.
Definitely, it's a
Okay.
possibility. Yeah.
Okay.
That you have a military outpost, but
Yeah.
then it's interesting because the sad part is that they put the city there and then forgot about it because it's barely mentioned in
Right.
any modules or whatever. And that's that I was going to say. So demographically, and Jay, you're perfectly right. You can probably come up with 10 reasons why they want to put a city
Okay.
there. And the king of Keelland might say, well, I want to invest because I want to put the flag down, I want to dominate. That makes perfect sense. And I'm going to take money out of the budget to make sure I'm succeeding. And you have an example, Westkeep is an example of that. And that was written up in the story as a place where the king of Keelland wanted to put down his flag south of the Yavan and expand into the Sea Princes, and he paid dearly for it, and he stuck in a morass of problems, and it became like a stalemate in the war if you read the stories of Living Greyhawk. So there you have the example. But the interesting thing is that someone put Redshore as a city, and then it was just forgotten. And if it's forgotten and we don't have any reasonable stories, you either have to do like you did, Jay, you come up with good story behind it, or the numbers don't really make sense.
Right. And so there's no everything.
Snafu has a good point too.
Okay.
It has an isthmus exposed with the tides. That's an interesting possibility.
Yeah. Or a storm washed. I've seen this in a lot of places in Florida. There are islands now, but they were connected to the mainland down there, and then a hurricane came through, and that was it. And now they're disconnected. So I mean, that could be another thing with. All right, so at this point, Rich, you got all this data. So what are you doing with this data now? Like, what's the evolution from this point? You've done comparison, you've done analysis. You say Living Greyhawk's fairly close, which is good enough. Some minor things you change, but what was your I know you're a numbers guy and you love love doing all this, but what's next step? What's your purpose for, or how do you want to take this information and utilize it?
Well, I usually print it up and I roll up and I sleep with it at night. Hug it against me like a little baby.
Nice.
All my Excel sheets.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Actually, Roger Moore, when he joined the Cannon Fire Discord, I started feeding him because he was asking, so I started feeding him some of my Excel sheet. He called me the Mad Indexer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I did it as I just want to see how close they were to, how reasonable they were. That's why I did it.
Right.
Because I traveled all over the place, all over the world with my players, right? It's mostly Furiani. Then I moved to Joff, and then the Grand March, and then I went to Keelan, and now I'm sitting down in the Omen Isles. And so I wanted to make sure that I had something set up so no matter where my players wanted to go, I kept the Greyhawk feel.
Okay.
So the points of light feel. I didn't want them to show up and say, okay, now we're going to be going to Narisban, and there's 1 million people on this island and everything else, which wouldn't make sense. So like Mike's on the Narisban campaign, he's playing. So the South Olman Isle, which I call Respite, I said, okay, if I want to keep the same density, give or take, probably lower, because it's a jungle island. I want to put some adventures there. I put the Forgotten City there and all that.
Oh, cool.
And I said, so I said, I want to keep only, Narisban is the biggest city, a couple of smaller towns, and then just villages in the center core. I wanted more or less wilderness. Well, I said only this many people could be on the island. Therefore, Narisban can't be too big compared to the other ones. And so that gave a feel, right, for the players. So then I said, okay, now that I know how big Narisban is, I decided the area of Narisban, how far the farms go out from Narisban and the plantations, and the rest was wilderness. And basically, I'd say a good 85 to 90% of that South Olman Isle is wilderness, prime for adventures.
Where are we on here, Rich?
The South Olman Isle.
Olman Isles. Yeah.
This
one? The bottom one? Yeah.
Oh, there's Narisban. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so I call that Respite, the island of Respite.
Okay.
The one to the north is Ravenous.
Ravenous.
Ravenous
Do
because
you have your Het Monoland stats done, demographic stats done? I need to know the population density of Southern Het Monoland.
yeah, you're not getting any of that, Mike, because you guys are campaigning there now. But when I'm done, I'll do it. But that would be the next
So,
thing.
man,
Yeah, I haven't done Het
Yeah.
Monoland yet, so that's the next thing. Depends if you guys decide to stick around or leave after what I'm going to throw at you guys next
Yeah.
game.
And it can be interesting if you want to plan your next campaign and you look around the big map and you start thinking if you want to populate like I did in Southern Shieldland and now Rich did for the Ulman Isles and stuff, you start looking into it. You can, if you take medieval numbers and then start thinking fantasy on top of it, so to speak, meaning a low density wilderness will have anything from 0 up to maybe 30 people per square mile. That's considered low. That's so low you will have no speciality. You will have the a few rangers, some weirdos living out nowhere. The tiny, some occasional little hermit village of a few. That there are some people that roam through. That is like a keep where mad wizards hold court for 10 people or stuff like that. So the odd ones out. Then you have an area that up to like 30 per square mile, and that is and always think it's not equal. If you have 30 people in 1 square mile, you can, or 60, you keep with 60 people and you have that there's like 25 miles until you see the next person, so to speak, in one direction it can be, with numbers that low. And then you have an average population area, meaning if you think of the areas where you have agriculture village, where by kings, noblemen, and stuff actually rule and have enough population to raise an adequate army to defend and stuff like that. We're talking like 30 people, maybe up to 60 or 70 or something like that. That's kind of what we would consider countryside, so to speak. And then when you go from about 50, 60 up to about 120, even 200 might per square mile if you have big city. But if you have numbers higher than about 120 per square mile, then you either need to import food, because there is no chance with medieval type agriculture that you can support a population without importing food. Or you have magical aid, meaning you have temples that can create food and water with clerics, or you have druids that can artificially bless the fields and you can create more. You can import livestock and live off that and stuff. So then you can have your fantasy version of Manhattan or like city of Greyhawk and stuff.
230.
Yeah. So you can start thinking in those terms, and if you have a square mile and you support 200 people, that's not particularly high at all. But what you can do then is that you can start squeezing in 50,000 people in a couple of square miles. That means that you have created a density void, meaning they need hundreds of square miles to support themselves in the countryside around for grazing, for producing grain and stuff like that in order to support them. Or you need to resort to magic or import or something. And these are just rough numbers that you can just keep in the back of your head. If you create a used city, that city is not coming out of a vacuum unless there is like magic or planner or something involved. And otherwise they need a huge support structure. If you have a 20,000 city of 20,000 people, that's going to have a range of 100 miles or so where it affects, where they will import people. Farmers will come with their pigs and their cows and geese and stuff every month or so, go and sell them in the big city, earn some money, and then go back home and breed new ones. And they will bring in their potatoes and grain and whatever to feed the big city population.
So Mike asked an interesting question about his character. How tough is he? Right. So that is
Right.
also
Yeah.
demographic. This is something that you can have fun with your characters as well, right? Your players. So what I actually did was I actually broke up the fighter population
Oh wow.
in terms of percentage. So I said amongst the fighters, or I guess in D&D you would call it fighter class, but whatever, you could say 75% of these fighters worldwide are first and second level. Then you could say 18% is going to be third, fourth, fifth. And then you go down to 6% would be, 7, 8, 9. And then you break it down. And then you get to the point where, maybe 0.1% is above 12th level.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could say 0.0001 is above 18th level. So that when your character is going through and gaining levels, he could say, wow, I'm in the top 10%. Oh, I'm in the top 5%. I'm in the top 1%. So Lore, which is Mike's character, is in the top 0.1% of fighters. So he's
meaning how many
0.1.
archmages do you want to have in your world? Meaning if 20 level wizards, if you want more than 50 or 100 in World of Greyhawk, or not more than that, then you need to go down to the 0.000% of otherwise you will end up with thousands of 20th archmages walking around, and that will undoubtedly change the exactly. So those
I
numbers,
always
that's
used to
when you
keep a
think
leaderboard. Back in the day, I had a wizard leaderboard on level and drove my friends nuts.
But you can also say how it's a great idea, but then you also have to turn around. How risky is it to have the job of being an archmage? Meaning, do they kill each other? Are there monsters and others simply because you're so powerful that they will go after you and stuff like that? That's the other demographic, meaning how risky is it to be in a certain demographics in a fantasy world? That's another interesting thing, meaning how risky it is it to be a 10th level plus fighter? Meaning, is people going around trying to eliminate you because if you're not working for me, you're working for the enemy, or something like that. So that's another interesting question that comes with it. And
the glossography has, along Rich's lines here, it has on page 16 distribution of high-level NPCs.
There you go. Yeah.
So, for example, 50% of your NPCs encounter are going to be fighters, and 3% of them will be 19th level and above.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Wow, that's a good one. Yeah,
that's a big number. That's too big. I went much lower than that.
That is big.
Now, I agree. Like Gary's mentioned, it depends. It won't be the same everywhere, correct? But what I'm saying is, if you look at the Flaness as a whole, you could set up, I want this progression, right? So the players know how they are worldwide. But then when you get into specific areas, like Gary says, Greyhawk City, Relastra, maybe the percentage is skewed, more powerful there. But that means that in the smaller backwaters of Furienda or whatever, the percentage will be lower for the higher level guys. So it would compensate. But overall, the Flaness, you would get same distribution. What I do is I actually, for the demi-humans, because they live longer, I skew the numbers more to the top end.
There it is.
Yeah.
So there are more high-level elven fighters and dwarven fighters by population than human high-level.
That's a good point. A first-level elf is almost like, did you just leave home for the first time?
Inexperienced teenager. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Molku, that's a good point, but I think there is more to it than that, because look, and this depends on how much realism you want, because that's a perfect value to say, well, the higher up you are, the more scary you are to attack, but you also become a bigger target. And if you take a real world conflicts and stuff, and the same thing in organized crime. If you take like a conflict like Ukraine, if you're a Russian general, your days might be numbered, because the kill ratio of high level officers are damn high, because they will spend billions or millions of dollars of ammo to hunt you down, so to speak. The same thing if you're high level in organized crime, you have so many powerful enemies that want you dead. So in many ways, it might be more dangerous to be a high level than lower levels, so to speak. The lowest levels is probably very risky, because you don't cost anything there's lots of you, so you just put them forward, and then it becomes less risk, and then at the top again the risks goes up. But it's depending on the nature of your campaign. But if you want to put realism in there should be, with power comes responsibility and risk. So I can see a world where being an archmage is really, really dangerous, because you're that top power tier, and that means that you always have a lot of enemies. Simply by having that potential power, you become something that a lot of others want to get rid of.
True.
Yeah.
But in Greyhawk, what are the most well-known legendary characters? All high-level mages. I mean, there's others,
Yeah.
but they're
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
very rarely
And
do they
that
get
also
killed.
makes you in the crosshairs, because if you are someone else with ambitions, simply because someone is well known, that means that, yeah, I want to kill you simply because, or get rid of them simply in order to get more notoriety, so to speak. So being Mordenkainen is probably putting a price on your head that increases the price a bit. So you become more of a target by fame, so to speak, too.
Being the fastest gun in the West. There's always
Yeah,
someone
and or being
after
the
you.
biggest organized crime lord, so to speak, that then getting that reputation and everybody knows you, that means that you have a bigger target on your back than just being someone who no one knows about.
I mean, the two worst things to be a high-level mage in Greyhawk is they either go bald or they turn you into a gnome.
Yeah, exactly. That might,
That's what
yeah, that
happened.
might be worse fate than being killed, being
Yeah.
turned into a gnome. Yep.
Here comes another Mr. Negative question.
Yeah.
Tell me, Rich, or Mike and Anna, what demographically makes the least amount of sense in everything that's published?
I have a
Too
couple of
many
examples.
monsters?
So I actually, if you work hard enough, like Anna says, you can make anything work, right?
Right,
Yeah.
I understand that, but just something you're like, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yep.
Too many orcs running around, too many, right?
No, I think the orcs are pretty
Okay.
good. If you look
Yep.
at
Yep. Yeah,
the
that's
orcs,
not my
the human
biggest
numbers are
caveat.
pretty good in the
Yeah.
published stuff.
Yeah.
Now, one nice thing about demographics is you need, my opinion is you need to have orcs and goblins and humanoids need to get really close to the same numbers as humans, right? You need a good number of them because they get slaughtered so often.
Yeah, their lifespan is
Well, they
short.
breed a
That
lot
means
more
that their
too,
numbers
right?
need to be high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they start breeding at 8 years old. Gary loves it when I talk about age of consent amongst humanoids when you can start breeding.
Yeah.
Birth rate was something I was going to bring up later, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's in one of the Excel sheets I gave I gave Jay.
Excel? Okay.
The second
Yeah.
one, I think it's the second one I gave you. The population.
Yeah. While you're looking for that, I'm
With
going
the
to take
methods
one.
on it?
Orth demographics.
There's I have another an example of something that I think is really off demographically, and that is Rel Astra used to be the capital of the Great Kingdom, and Medigia or however you pronounce it, is another very important place in the Great Kingdom, and they are basically seated in areas of vacuum. There is hardly nothing around it. There are hundreds of miles before you even reach any other settlement or any other infrastructure whatsoever. They are setting, it's like having the capital of Washington, D.C. in Alaska and have nothing in between, meaning that doesn't demographically make sense to me. Either you move them somewhere, and they moved the capital to Ross's in the story too, so that kind of makes sense. But even having it there and even sustaining these big cities and coastal cities on top, there should be way more between Rossi's and Relastra and between Medigia and the rest of the Great Kingdom, so to speak. Those are way too isolated, in my opinion, to make sense story-wise. And I haven't seen anything in the story that supports their place geographically or importance, so to speak. So there's some demographic vacuum there in between.
Okay, so that's a demographic gripe. Gary said Nyrond is really goofy. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree.
It's that percentage. It's that percentage. Drives me nuts, and I agree with Mike on that. They just put 79.85 or whatever it is over and over again, and
they rounded off some numbers.
There should be more elves in Selene than in most other countries, even when you take percent into account. And it doesn't work out that way, so I don't like that too much.
See, I handled that in my own campaign when I had a war called the Sorrowful Wars, where they lost a lot of elves. So that's how I handled that. Which is a personal thing, but you're right. So you think there should be more elves?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I think what I think they did is, the way I played it in my game is that the LGG numbers are Selene Kingdom ruled by the Queen, but it doesn't count all the independent elven kingdoms that she doesn't hold sway over. Elves
Yeah.
are very independent, so there's probably a
Mhm.
whole bunch of elves in the forest, and the gnarly, and the sus, and all this.
Yeah.
Well,
You
like
don't
in the Welkwood, and
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
like,
they don't hold allegiance to the queen Yolan
okay.
more
Yeah.
than she's one of their buddies, and that's about it. So they're not counted. So
Yeah.
I put a lot of elves
Okay.
in there.
Yeah.
And even the mountains, right? At the Lord Mills, there's probably a bunch of
Yeah.
elf villages in
Mhm.
the Lord Mills.
Yeah. And Jay, when you did say, well, I lower the population in Selene, so that makes sense. But then have you thought about the consequences of lowering that? Because that means that there will be much less elven magic items made. There will be the elven uh, uh, able-bodied soldiers will
But
go down,
that's
meaning
yes.
you will diminish the Selene power level significantly, so to speak.
No, because now they have a lot more half elves.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
what
there you
that's what
go.
the solution. We were trying to
Ah.
explain why, because this is first edition. Everyone played
Yeah.
half elves because they wanted to play triple class characters like Gazumba, Hawk, all the. Everyone wanted to play Fighter Cleric Mage, Fighter Mage Thief because those were the cool
Yeah.
classes back in the early '80s.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
had to figure out why all these half elves are coming out of Selene. That was kind of the reason why.
See, but see,
Yeah.
that's great. You thought about
Yeah.
demographics and you
Right.
did what I said, meaning, okay, we have this problem, so you adjust demographics to fit your playstyle. Perfect.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's just was a
Yeah,
simple
that's great.
explanation for us.
I think
Okay.
I think it's great. It's awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good example of how you should do it and can do it and make it work. Yeah.
And it's all personal preference too
No, yeah,
on game style
exactly.
and
Yep.
graphical settlements we've never heard of.
Yeah.
That's true, Gary, and I always love putting them in. That's what's so great about it being wide open.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, this thing my head may explode looking at this, Rich, because this is really some deep.
This is me. This is my OCD, guys.
Yeah. So
Okay,
let's hear about this.
So what I did was I said, okay, let's say you start off with 200 people. 100. I think I put
In
200.
year 200, those born here are all alive.
Okay. So basically, what I said is,
Love
okay,
this.
I said, let's say you start off with, I think I put like 200 people or no, 100 people. So I said 100 people. So it's going to be 50 men, 50 women. And then they reach a breeding age and they have kids and I put how many kids they have. And then I went through the generations to see, and I took the middle of each generation. I figured every 20 years they reproduce, blah, 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 blah. And I worked down and I said, okay, at the end of 360 years, those 100 humans will end up at 135,000 humans. Okay, so if you go all the way to the bottom of the human section and that Excel sheet.
I blew it up real big, so 146 this.
135, you go down.
Here it is.
After 360 years, there's 135,000 humans. Then I scroll down and say, okay, dwarves, again, you start with 100. After the same 360 years, you'll end up with 19,000 dwarves. Right? So you can see that these dwarves are falling way behind.
And extend that over a couple of thousand years, and humans will have taken over the world.
Yeah, 14,000 elves after 360 years.
Yep.
Gnomes, 9,000.
Right.
Gnomes really reproduce slowly.
Yeah, 750 years age.
Yeah.
Halflings, 48,000. Not so bad. Right?
Orcs,
516,000 orcs.
Yeah.
Right?
So now, Rich, when you have these numbers, if you index that according to lifespan, so you kind of make it assume that they all have a standardized lifespan.
Yeah.
How big of numbers would the humans take over enormously over 100? Let's assume over 100,000 years. What will happen if the elves live for 1,500 years and humans live for 70 and stuff?
This is how many after 360 years. This is how many are alive. Right.
So, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
The original 300 elves.
So that means that humans have to be very warmongery and succumb to all sorts of calamities and stuff in order for the population not to explode, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or the elves have to keep themselves alive for 5,000 years or something.
Yeah. So now, I put it. If you look at the top of each of those things, I made some of these crazy assumptions. Right. I said, okay. The humans have on average 5 kids, 3.25 survive to adulthood by the age of 3 years old. So I said, okay, so they have, I said 3.5 of the 5 kids survive to adulthood.
Right.
So they 1.75 to disease or to death or accidents. I said dwarves, they have 4 kids, 3.6 survive. So they're pretty good. They only lose about 10% of their kids on the way down. Elves have 8 kids.
And all survive.
They all survive because they
Yeah.
have very good medicine and whatnot.
Yeah.
That means elves have 8 kids, right, over 200-300 years, which makes sense. Every 50 years they have a kid.
Yeah.
Right? Gnomes have 5 kids of 4.25 survive because
Yeah.
gnomes have better hygiene than humans. Orcs, halflings have 5 kids, 4 survive. And then orcs have 5 kids, only 2.8 survive.
Mm-hmm.
So slightly more than half.
I
Even
think that's high, actually.
Have you shaped? Do
Yeah.
the numbers make sense when you do this adjustment, or is still humans and others
No, that's what I
going
mean.
crazy?
No, this is
Yeah.
with those assumptions.
Yeah.
Get those numbers. So
Yeah.
even if orcs with 5 kids, only 2.8 survive of those 5 kids,
Yeah.
they still get to 516,000 orcs
Yeah.
compared to the
Yeah. And interesting because we talked about this, must have been 6-7 years ago the first time.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at hobgoblins for my Shieldlands campaign, I started thinking, okay, now I need to start thinking demographics here. What and I simply say they are lawful, and in that sense that they are pride and clan, meaning they're community based, so to speak. They don't think about themselves individually first. They're like, I want to be part of a strong group of hobgoblins. I have it for hobgoblins, that's very important. So they are group thinkers in that sense. They're evil, but they think group, so to speak. And to belong to the group is really, really important. They don't want any weaklings and so on. They want pure good stock of hobgoblins in the Gensal horde. If you don't measure up, you should be exterminated, basically. And so eugenics is important for them. So I had it that what they do in order to trim their numbers, they don't want to have lots of little kids to care for that ends up nowhere. So what they do is that they make sure they create as many hobgoblins as possible because it's fun. Everybody, they all like to have sex and make lots of them. And then what the women do, they put all the new ones born in a pit, and then they just put down whatever resources like milk and blood and all this stuff to feed them when they're really young, and then they simply battle it out. And the ones that are big enough and grow big enough in order to survive, they can climb out into the next pit, so to speak. They are mated into, and then what they do, and they sit and cheer on each one, and then finally after like 2 years in the pits, so to speak, those final ones come out, and they are the most awesome, the best, meaning they have survived by conquered all of them, and they are greeted into, and no one knows who they belong to in the first place. So they are greeted as the new fighters in the hobgoblin community and cheered by everybody, and everybody agreeing against Al Horde, we have the best damn hobgoblins in the world, because when they come up at age 4 or 5, they are basically first level fighters because they are, yeah, exactly. They're really tough. So and that thought experiment that I kind of eventually went with, that was just me thinking, okay, what in a fantasy world, if you have an evil society where it's about the toughest, and you start thinking not individually, but you think, we want to have the best damn community, and the rest of the world is very, very hostile. Think the 300 movie from and the stories and something like that. I wanted to have a pure evil version of that, but they still care for each other. That kind of thing I wanted to dive down. So meaning in a fantasy world, you can start pushing things to the extreme in order to test. It's where you can test things that are so wide out there that no one would even come up the idea in the real world. But in a fantasy world, you can, meaning aboleths and mind flayers and stuff, they can treat their numbers and their society in a very weird way, meaning the drow, the Drist books, where you have drow societies and stuff that are very, very out there in how they treat their young ones and family structures and how they care for the next generation and stuff. And I think this adds interesting flavor to a fantasy world. And now I just need a caveat. I don't propose or have any, this is pure evil, has nothing to do with the real world, or shouldn't have, so to speak, just to make that clear for everybody. But in a fantasy world, I think it would be cool to have a hobgoblin tribe that does something like this. I can imagine trolls doing the same way or something like that. They want to make sure that all the trolls in their group are the fittest ever, so to speak. and they don't want to have parenting duties. That's no fun, and so on. But making new trolls is probably a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're asking about, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I reverse engineered my numbers. So what I said is I want to have after 360 years, I want a rough ratio between humans, elves, half elves, sorry,
Yeah.
real humans, elves, dwarves, and gnomes. And then I worked backwards, and I said,
Mhm.
how many births do they have to have? How many of them will survive to adulthood to
Yep.
get a proper ratio?
Mhm.
So that's where I came up with those numbers. So and
then-
they're not
yeah,
unreasonable. I mean,
No, they're great, and it's so interesting because this is where you can start using interesting world building when you see numbers like this, and you can also start thinking, what are the numbers for dragons in this sense? Meaning,
I got that.
how
I
many?
got that,
Oh,
Anna.
awesome,
got that.
awesome. Yep. Mhm.
I got that. So
Yep.
if you pull up my Word document I sent you,
Yep. I converted it to a PDF because it's
Okay.
only one page, right?
yeah. Well, I think it was one page.
1 second.
Yep.
But I actually did a Canon
Now
5.
we're getting into the interesting bits here. This is awesome.
know,
I love
you know,
this.
like
This
this
is
one,
so
Creature
much fun.
territory, correct?
Yeah. I actually wrote a Canon Fire article on this, but I
Mhm.
sent it to Jay.
Here we go.
All right. So what I did was I did a bunch of research on herbivores, how much they eat by their size, how much food is available in the territory, so how much their grazing area. So I looked at 5 or 6 different herbivores,
Yeah.
and then I turned it into a mathematical rough value, and then I gamified it because I mean I want to simplify it for a game, right?
Yep.
I said okay. I said there's basically 3 kinds of yields. There's average yield, good yield, and abundance. So average yield is about worth of grass and whatnot. It's about 25,000 kilos per kilometer is how much herbivores can live.
Yep.
in an
Meaning how
average
much
year.
prey is there for dragons to eat. Yep.
Well, that was first I did herbivores. So I said, okay,
Oh yeah. You have to do the food chain. Yep.
after the
Makes
food chain.
perfect
So I
sense.
said, okay,
Yep.
how many kilos of prey is available
Mhm.
per kilometers?
Yep.
Average good or abundant yield, I said 25,000, 50,000, 75,000 kilos per square kilometer.
And remind everybody, these can be cattle or wild or whatever.
That's right. It could be bison,
yeah, mhm,
jackrabbits,
yep,
gophers,
mhm,
birds, cattle, like anything,
Yep.
horses, anything that be. So I said, okay, first I calculate that, and that's roughly if you look up horse grazing and whatnot in real life, it's roughly those numbers, cattle.
mhm.
So it comes up to about that. So I said, okay, this is good. This matches real life. I said, how many acres and whatnot. Then I said, okay. Then I wanted the predators to eat these things, right? So I said, okay, so let's have fun. I said, okay, in Greyhawk or in the Flanest, there are big or greater creatures. So I said about 35% of the prey is eaten by these things that are bigger than large creatures. So this is dragons,
Mhm.
bullets,
Yep.
purple worms, things that are big. Then I said 30% of the prey is eaten by large creatures. So that's like the 3 hex creatures or the 4 square creatures in D&D, you know,
Like a
like
manicore.
a manticore, stuff like this, stuff that take 4
Yep.
hexes, you know, then the medium-sized creatures about 20% of the prey, those are human-sized. So I guess like a cheetah or a hyena type of thing. 10% of the prey is eaten by small creatures, foxes, hawks, and stuff. And then 5% is all the small little stuff like rats and all that stuff, right? Anything else that's small little
Okay.
podcasts. So I said, okay, based on that, and I said, okay, if you have X amount of kilometers, how many creatures do you have? So I said, here's an example. Let's say you have a 50-kilometer area, square kilometer area,
Mhm.
which is 1 Darlene hex. Okay.
Okay, because we're
Sorry, no,
miles.
50 kilometers.
It's a
no,
good
not-
unit for
sorry,
Greyhawkers to
no,
think in.
a 50
Yep.
kilometer square is a 5-kilometer diameter circle. So it's going to be like 1/100th of a Darlene hex. Because a Darlene hex is, let's say it's a
So-
square would be 30 kilometers by 30 miles by 30 miles, right?
Yep.
Yeah, this is one. Yeah, this is
which is about 50
smaller.
kilometers by 50 kilometers. So a
Wow.
5 by 5 is like just a small little corner of that, right? 1/10 by 1/10, right? So it's like 1/100th of a
Well, not
Darlene.
50. No, you're saying 50 by 50. You're not. Are you going 50 square kilometers? So it's 5 by 10 in kilometers.
Yeah, so
Okay.
a Darlene hex is 50 kilometers by 50 kilometers square, right?
Right.
Which is like 2,500 square kilometers.
Yeah.
This thing's 50 square kilometers.
Okay.
It's
So yeah, it's 150th.
minuscule,
150th.
minuscule portion of the Darlene hex,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So in that minuscule area, which is like a 5 kilometer diameter area, which would be about a 3 mile diameter. Think of a
Yep.
3 mile diameter, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big.
Yep.
You could have a bullet in there, but a bullet needs more than that. So I said a bullet, 1/5 of its territory is that. So it would have 5 of those little areas. That would be its hunting territory.
Yeah.
That
To
would, it wouldn't
sustain
share
itself
that,
over time, so to speak. Yeah.
yeah, but it wouldn't share that territory with anybody else because it's eating up all the
Mhm.
prey. Nothing else would be
Yep.
able to survive there. You'd have a tiger in that area. Tiger's a large creature. So he would take up that whole area by himself. He wouldn't share that with any other tiger or any other large creature. Then there'd be a bunch of medium creatures. I said you'd have 3 cheetahs, 5 hyenas in
Mhm.
that same area.
Yep.
And then you'd have a whole bunch of eagles and, you know,
And this assumes that you can have so many predators and there will still be a viable number of prey
viable
that exist
prey.
over time. So to speak, that will be
That's
that
right.
natural balance. Yeah.
That's right. So you would look at then as an example, let's say you have a 10,000 kilo predator, like a dragon. Dragon weighs about 10,000 kilos, 20,000 pounds, let's say.
Yeah.
1,000. So it would need like 2 million kilos of food, prey animals.
Yeah.
Right?
This is why in the real world, prey items are always bigger than the predators.
That's right.
Because otherwise it wouldn't work.
Yeah. Now that's assuming that a dragon eats as per a natural animal. Like you could always say a dragon needs like 1/10 the
Mhm.
amount of food if you want, but let's say it doesn't. Let's say you have a 10,000 kilo Tyrannosaurus Rex, for example, living around, right? So you have a T-Rex running around. He needs 20 million kilos worth of prey.
Yep.
He's considered a big or greater. He's like bigger than a large. So he only gets 35% of the prey. So you need like 57 million kilos of prey animals.
Mhm.
for
Well,
it
he
to
can
live.
eat some predators too, but
And
they
he's-
are so few in numbers that it wouldn't do any big dent to the overall numbers. Yeah.
So he needs about 1,000 square kilometers of good yield land, which is only a 20 kilometers diameter circle. Again, not even a Darling hex.
Yep.
So you could have multiple dragons in one Darling hex if they had no other big creatures in that area, and it's still viable. So that was good news for me. It's like, oh my god, this is great. So so you can have a dragon, every 5th or 6th Darling hex, and you're not.
And still maintain a wildlife and or cattle or something like that. Yeah. Mhm.
You could have, you could have bullets in there. You could have a lot of these big creatures, and it's not unreasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, just think of in an African national park and stuff, the number of predators, meaning you have hundreds of lions, there's enormous amount of crocodiles and cheetahs and leopards and stuff. Not enormous, but there's still many of them, so to speak. But still, those predators are smaller than the prey items, constantly, meaning that the prey items are the biggest tickets usually. And that's one of my problems with fantasy demographics, because we have a tendency of making the predators huge and the prey insignificant. We need to have, if you have lots of big predators, you need to have bigger, beefier things for them to eat too.
This is really cool. Just to note that. Now, of course, you're just doing it in general terrain. You're not talking about deserts. You're not talking about mountain ranges. You're just wanting to do a general example, temperate climate.
Yeah, like
that's a productive area, so to speak. In a desert, you would just make everything 5 times bigger because there will be less prey animals per area.
Instead of average yield is 25,000 kilos per square kilometer worth of prey animals, you'd say a desert, I only want 5,000 kilos per square kilometer, right?
Yep.
So then you would just adjust.
Yeah, a dragon will hunt over an area that is 4 or 5 times bigger if you have a desert, for instance, or up in the polar regions might be 10 or 20 times. But for a dragon that can fly for miles in and out, many miles per hour, that's not a biggie, meaning they can hunt over an area that is 1,000 square miles easy, or 10,000 square miles even. Meaning they can cover, if they can cover there, they might have a territory that is big enough for them that it takes a week for them to fly around, meaning that's the whole of the Flanese. And if you have one big greedy red worm, he might want to be picky eater, and he doesn't want to have too many toothpicks coming and disturbing him and big adventurers and stuff. So he might go and hunt in areas where there are only weak resistance or something. So he might live in one area. He might fly once or twice a week to areas and eat and feed, and he might strike from nowhere, so to speak. So just like you have various predators, they hunt over enormous areas like white sharks and stuff in the real world, meaning they hunt over whole oceans. Meaning they're seal pups over in this part of the Pacific this time of year, so they go down there and then they go up somewhere else another time of year, and that might be thousands of miles away. And you can have the real thing, meaning you can have seasonal hunting dragons, for instance, that hunt certain areas certain times of year. They might hunt in swarms, or they might wait for prey and stuff. So there's these, when you start running the numbers, that opens up interesting scenario possibilities that I think are really, really cool when you start doing it like this.
So speaking of aquatic prey, so a little shout out. So in the next Grey Grimoire magazine that's been coming out, I guess sometime this year, early next year, I have an article on maritime, and I talk about aquatic animals and
Oh, cool.
how the ranges that they go on and this and that. So you guys will...
That's awesome. Very, very cool. So what an observation that is not, I'm taking out from movies or whatever, to Greyhawk. Does it feel like whenever I watch Lord of the Rings, I go, where the hell are all those orcs getting the food in Mordor?
Yeah.
Do you have that same thought? Like they're not.
I always thought that was, so you could hit it in multiple ways. So Sam and I actually are aligned. Let's say for the giants, right? We're very aligned on this.
Okay.
What I did in my campaign, and Sam kind of followed up in his article in the last Visions magazine that came out, was that giants eat substantially less than humans, except when they want to breed. So when it's time for them to breed, they need to get a lot of mass in them, so a lot of food, which is after they invaded Joff, they ate all the cattle and humans and whatnot. So the giants went through a big reproduction cycle because of this invasion on Joff. So even if they're pushed back out of Joff, the giant population is a net increase from where they were before, because of all the massive amount of food that they took that allowed them to reproduce. And then they can go for like centuries, without having to eat that much.
Yeah.
So that's how Sam and I, but giants are magical creatures in my game, because the size and their mass, their bones would crumble if it was regular bone material. They have to have some sort of magic in them. So it makes sense. Orcs, you can do something similar if you want. I don't really think too much about it, because I don't like having orcs farm, to be honest. I know in a lot of the modules they have them running farms and having humans farm for them and whatnot, and
I have them raid. That's basically what they do. They collect and raid.
But how much can you raid at a certain point, Anna? I mean,
that's the thing. That's why and that is the thing. And they're lazy, and in that sense they want to show off. So they raid hard, and when they can't raid anymore, they kind of start perishing, and their population goes down, and they get desperate.
I always think something like, it's not discussed, but they feed on fungi in caves sometimes if they have to. Not stuff like that.
To some degree, yes.
A thought is that there's certain things that just like, I look at it and it doesn't. The smell test is off, and that always bothered me on the Mordor thing.
Yeah,
and it kind of bothers me in the Lands of Ayus, especially way up there.
Yeah,
but then again, they may have a lot of slave farming. I don't know, but
I can also see them. Yeah, they revert back to the worst of food, and that motivates them to go raiding again. So once they're down to eating the grass and or start farming and stuff, and that's no fun, so to speak. That then their urge will come, so to speak, and they will go out and raid again, and they're willing to risk life and limb in order to eat yummy for a few months. And that's then because they're constantly then banging their head against. They're creating enemies all the time, and that is one of the main reasons why the orcs aren't all over the place. Oh, so cute. Yeah.
So there you go, Anna. Since you had your dog, I get my dog too.
Oh yeah, he's passed out here. I ran around the neighborhood here, so that's good. Yeah, but that is also a way of regulating demographics. by introducing. So, Jay, I think it's an excellent question, and you can handle it. But I don't think there will be neat, organized farmers at home. They will be just scrape by on whatever, and then they will just some leader will come and inspire them to go hunting again or raiding, and then they will, and most of them will perish. But the few, while they come back, have eaten well and had good adventures and stories to tell, and come back home and they procreate and pop out some more orcs, and when food run out, they start going again. That's why we not run over by humanoids, because they lack the ability to organize over time. They haven't done it, at least, or few have, but that's the minority. There's the majority of them. They are extremist in politics in that sense, that the extremist rules, so they want to go out and cause problems for everybody else in order to think short term, so to speak, and they are thriving on it short term, and everybody else have to suffer the consequences, so to speak. I think that makes more interesting from a fantasy perspective. It makes interesting games. You want conflict, and it also become, the orcs and others can become more interesting characters that way, and so on. And you can make the numbers make sense to some degree. But it's a really pertinent, important question to ask, and that's the way I saw it. But you can also have magic, meaning, what if you're a demigod or a god like Sauron or I use, maybe you can import enough food resources to keep at least your troops reasonably happy for a year or 2 or 3 or something like that. But over time they get bored and they want to go out there and kill anyway, something. Or you just want to, or maybe you want to starve them enough to get them angry and warlike, so to speak. You don't want fat, lazy orcs. You want mean, lean war machines that are so hungry that they will go out and kill just to survive. So you can put fantasy politics into this too. So
just a pet peeve. There were 2 things. That was one of the 2 things that bothered me. And I just put the other one in chat. When the Isengard are going there and they start eating the other orc, and he goes, "Meat's back on the menu, boys." I'm thinking, how does this orc know what a menu is?
No, that was a mistake. That was not the line. He misread it.
Oh, he misread the line?
The line was meat is back in service or something.
Oh, I didn't know that. And they kept it in.
And the actor who played that orc misread the line.
It works.
I didn't know that, Rich. You just solved a multi-year issue for me. Yeah, that was like, that doesn't make sense.
That's what I heard. That's what I read somewhere.
Okay.
So what happened? But they didn't catch it in editing, and it went out, and then it became a meme, and they said, "Oh,
okay. Oh, that's kind of cool.
So,
Oh, meat is back on the table. That's what it was. Yeah.
So there you go. So that solves that itch I had for years. Most of it was done well. Look, for me, I don't delve anywhere near as deep as either one of you, Anna or Rich, you do. But that's I completely respect what you've done. You've done it very step by step and made some legitimate arguments for everything.
Yeah. The same argument can go for dwarves, meaning, do they have underground agriculture? Do they have overground agriculture? Or how the heck do they survive, so to speak? Or they live on fungus mushrooms? Or do they brew swamp beer and drink that or something? So,
So what I did with dwarves is I have them in the smaller villages. So they'll have the mountain dwarves will have internal farms, which are lit. They light it, so they do that. They also have small farms.
Sun spells are good.
Yep. They also have small farms outside their mountains.
Yep.
Which they might trade with the hill dwarves as well.
Yeah.
Those are not the big dwarven communities, which is why Gilmorak, which is in the low road, which is at the really near to Valuna, that town is huge because they trade a lot with Valuna. They trade weapons and whatnot for food for Valuna, because Valuna is a breadbasket.
Yeah,
that's why there's a lot of dwarves there, because they trade for a lot of food.
Yeah, and I have another one with my dwarfs communities is that they are widespread geographically, but they have permanent gates between each other. That's the
Oh.
dwarven temples. So a dwarven settlement might be hundreds or 1,000 miles away from any other one, but you can just walk across into it, so to speak. You can't do it in unlimited resource, meaning there's not an unlimited amount you can do it, but you can do it reasonable enough that you can transport food and people and stuff. That means that it's also part of dwarven defense. If you attack a dwarven community, they can bring in a few hundred dwarven capable fighters almost instantly. And neighbors have learned that, so they don't go around messing with dwarven settlements because they have a defensive capability that is far higher than their actual numbers, so to speak. So, and that also makes up that there are some dwarven communities that have specialized in food production and they can export easily to others, and some of the other ones. So there's like a dwarven economy going on in the background, so to speak. And then you have export dwarven communities and trading ones, and you have production dwarven communities that are basically just a mine and produce, and then you have others that refine it into ore and metal and stuff. So that's how I
That's
try
interesting.
to deal with the dwarfs.
Can it be just as simple as they don't talk about it, but they have underground fishing and the underground rivers? I mean,
they can have that too. Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
it could be
definitely.
that.
Yeah.
It could be
Yep. So I have them that dwarven communities.
certain
I have them at
livestock.
lawful. They specialize a lot, so to speak, and they're really good organizers. So and they can both trade with each other and specialize in things. So there's like a dwarven economy going, and in that sense, and they have huge pride and they trust each other in a way that a lot of others like humans don't do. Meaning different human countries, they don't trust each other, but different dwarven communities trust each other way more, so they are much more open to support each other than human communities are.
I'm going to ask a really, really dumb, childish question. How many of you, when you're setting up your game or when you make your building and you map it out, do you put privies in your bathrooms and
Yes, I do. I
and
always
all
do.
of your stuff?
Yes,
'Cause
yes,
think about
always.
it. It's another
Yes.
thing that's like,
Oh yeah, I always do. Yep. And I had a great example when some of
Kind
the
of
players,
forgotten.
they were hunting around for goblins, and they found a goblin on the privy outside, and we had one fight, barbarian, I think it was. He had the axe, and he scored a crit, maxed out the damage, and I simply said, well, you cut the goblin in two, and then you splash poo all over you and stuff, because you cut through the critter and down into the poop and everything. So that was kind of funny. We all
Well,
laughed
I
and
had a
stuff.
crap golem a couple weeks ago, Anne, if you remember.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I definitely do. I put reasonable. But that's another interesting. Meaning
Yeah.
rich people have indoors and poor people have an outhouse in the back somewhere. And stuff.
And,
So,
and a
yeah.
lot of my 3D print companies now, we have a whole bunch of. If you ever notice on my city, there are
Yeah.
outhouses around.
Oh,
that are
yeah,
out,
that's
you know.
great.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we have multiple different ones made up
Mhm.
already, and we put them out
Yep.
there. But I don't like they're not part of a lot of part of the dungeon setting. Very rarely, or they're not part of a building setting in a drawing. And it's another demographic thing. It's well, not a demographic thing. It's another assumed thing that you need to
Yeah.
exist naturally. That's forgotten in a fantasy
Mhm.
setting.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just saying,
dungeons. Yeah, and dungeons should have a much bigger problem with this, because how the heck do you, when you poop a lot over time, what the heck do you do with it when you basically live in the
Get an
basement?
audio.
Exactly, get an adiog or something that consumes it, or
Carrion crawler.
teleport it away, nuke it, or burn it, or whatever. But yeah, so that's a huge problem, and I'm
Yeah.
started thinking about that too. So yeah, I love these
Well,
problems.
Lord Bresson uses a bag of holding,
Mhm.
and when it's full, he just hands it off to one of the other players.
This topic is awful.
Yeah, but
But
these things are fun. Yeah.
So I have to ask Rich this question too.
Hmm.
You didn't break this down via Backlunish, Sewell, Iridian. Is it just too difficult to do in Greyhawk because they're
I
everywhere?
don't know. I did it. If you look at it,
Oh,
Of
He did
course he did it. This is awesome.
if you look at the second Excel sheet I sent you, the one with the birth rates, if you go with the first tab,
all right. 1 second here. Let me make sure.
of course I did it.
This one,
Yeah, go to the first worksheet.
Earth demographics.
Yep.
Okay.
There they are.
Oh, okay. Sewell, Iridium, Beckluni, Flan. Oh, I missed that.
I cut you. And if you go to the right, and
Oh,
if you go to the right, it actually has the actual numbers, and
right.
actually broken up into
Huh.
different kind of dwarves, mountain
How many
dwarves.
Reni are there?
And then if you go to the right, it goes by, you know, all the elf types.
Whoops.
Whoops, too much.
Oh, yeah, you gotta be careful because they're blown up. Ah,
See? So no, those are all the percentages from the LGG, and then to the right of that is the actual number.
look at that.
And so if you
Yeah.
look at it, there it goes. There are 5.6 Sewell million, 8.8 Iridian, only 4.6 Beckluni, of course,
Mhm.
and 2.5 Flan.
Okay.
So the Flan are
Here.
very little.
How many Reni?
They're other 100,000.
I like that
That
number.
kind of makes sense. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm actively trying to get that Sewell number up and that Beckluni number down, but Gary refuses to reprint LGG2 with by revised numbers.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm
And that's another thing when you think about demographics. You have to have changes over time, but they should then you should start thinking in centuries, not in shorter lifespans. That's how you need to start thinking of it, like in 20 by decades at least in numbers.
No
Meaning
Sewell
elven.
and Chief.
Yeah.
So I don't have that spreadsheet, Rich. What was the Sewell, Orid, and Becklunish totals again?
Sewell 5.6 million, Orid 8.8 million,
Okay.
Beckluni 4.6,
Hmm.
Flan 2.5.
All
I'll
right.
send it to you, Mike. I'll send it to you.
That's fine. But no, I'm just trying to think sure that yeah, there should be more Orids than the other groups.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was pondering was the Sewell and the Becklunish 1,000 years ago had a nuclear war, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And now they got up to 5 and 4 million people after that.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you think in 1,000-year span they built their numbers up that
Well,
much?
yeah, but that's what, if you go to my birth rate, Mike, right? If you go
Yeah.
to the birth rates, remember
Does that check
humans,
out?
100 humans, after 360 years, not 1,000, 360,
Right.
are already up to 135,000.
Yeah, it's
So
it's
All right.
to get to
remarkable
5
over.
million,
So
Yeah.
it is
you only need
possible.
5,000.
How many?
5,000 humans after 360 years would be 5
Yeah.
million.
What
After
didn't
1,000
50?
years,
Yeah.
That's why it was boiling down to reverse engineering it. How many Sewell escaped from the sea of dust? You know, how many Orids moved out before it hit the fan,
now you
etc.
assume that, I mean,
I
you
know.
gotta, this is assuming that you don't have slaughters and wars. I mean, the Sewell and the
Sure.
Bethlehem and there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now I looked into this. There is a minimal viable population number, so you don't get inbreeding, right?
In humans, in a lot mammals, I think it's around 500 or so. If you go under
Yeah.
that, you're
Tim, you
screwed
missed that part.
basically.
Yeah.
Then you need special attention,
Well,
meaning
I'm
you
guessing
need
you lift the
selective
off.
breeding and stuff in order to
Generational chart
otherwise
for
it will be
elves.
you will go under. So
Two.
500 is some sort of below that, and you need special attention and help, and you need to carefully monitor all your offspring in order to survive if
funny,
you go
Curtis.
below that number. So yeah.
Yeah. So assume 5,000 got out of the out of the
Yeah,
empire.
that's a
more than
viable
Okay.
population. Yeah,
That's 5,000 is a perfect good live,
Yeah.
viable, and
yeah.
Because that's what I was trying to
Definitely.
figure out. Like
Yeah.
today, how many humans are in Q-Land? 1 million humans,
Yeah.
right? So how, like, what percentage increases that from the original ones that got out, right?
yeah.
Probably
And-
It's
pretty
tough
high
because
then.
some left
Yeah.
before too,
Yeah.
right?
But
Not
it's
Not as
like
many as the Orids.
yeah.
Orids had a huge head start.
But it's
No,
like the
I
real
always-
world population numbers. If you look at now when we have started having genetics, we can do DNA analysis of human DNA. The numbers of Homo sapiens that escaped out of Africa and settled the rest of the world were only in the hundreds, or
Yeah, it
that there
wasn't
was
many.
so few. Exactly, there were so few that we can start seeing individual DNA traces in the rest of the population. compared to the differences from the ones that are stayed in Africa.
Can't they
And
go
yeah.
back to 60 female genomes? That's it?
Yeah, or yeah, something like that. It's
Yeah.
it's like it's almost like one mother of the rest of the world, so to speak.
Yeah.
There were very, very, very few Homo sapiens at one time that escaped out of Africa or fled or migrated out of Africa, so to speak. So it's interesting. So from a fandom perspective, you would have had a small population of Sul and Baklunia on either side could very well give back for after thousands of years, or at least like 1,500 years. You need a few thousand on either side, and that could have made it, so to speak.
Yeah. So yeah, if you, I've done it. I've traced my genes back to the one woman of the 60. Her name was Ugg Sul. All the way back.
Yep.
Right, 60 that have lineages that survive the present day. Yeah.
So you can make interesting, cool scenario and histories and stuff like that with numbers like this, and you can build and come up with cool stuff. Exactly, you can come up with cool stuff, so to speak, and yeah. And that's what I think you should do with numbers like this. It's not just for the numbers' sake themselves, but they should inspire you to come up with cool stories, backstories, and explanations and stuff like that for stuff. And also vice versa. You have a cool story, then jot down the numbers that make that story make sense, and then use that number to inspire other stories and other things down the line. Like how big of an army can that whatever evil ruler have managed to gather in the next 50 years in order to take over the world, or whatever it is.
So I picture the Sul, Baklunia, and Iridians who were coming to Flaness.
Yeah.
Were not only fighting each other, but they were also fighting the vestiges of the Vecna's empire, right? All those undead.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Still roaming, right?
Yep.
So that's why their population is not that large. It hasn't gone as to the 10-fold and 100-fold times that it needed, because they grow a bit, then all these undead would slaughter them, and then they got pushed back, and then they grew, and then the wars would happen. The wars, I think, in the Flaness are fairly devastating, because my opinion is that the wars happen, but then you got the famine afterwards, and all this, and the breakdowns, and so the deaths are. So that's why the population spikes and goes down, and spikes and goes down, and spikes and goes down.
Yeah.
So in theory, it should be much higher if over 1,000 years they had a consistent reproduction and everything else. But I think every few years something bad happens. I blame it on the dragons in my campaign.
Well, yeah, you have dragons, you have undeath, you have magical diseases, you have godly wraths, you have fancy magics, and just be chaotic neutrals that go, or chaotic evils that go crazy, and meaning a fantasy world is full of hazards, more than the regular real world, so to speak. So that can make the numbers make sense. Yep.
This has been a really enlightening discussion. Just thinking about that, I like that the numbers are low compared to like what Europe was in the Middle Ages or whatever. I love having all that vastness open and Greyhawk to do with it whatever you want, right? And to fill it in with a community or a city, or just something going on in an area that is not overly done. I mean, there's only a few areas that have too much in them, right? Like Verbalbank.
But you also.
But even Verbalbank is not much.
Yeah, that's true.
If you look at Firiundi, which is one of the more tamed countries, only 15%, up to 15% of it is actually tamed. 85% of Firiundi has no footprint.
Right,
but you also need but you also need enough population for the armies. Meaning, how the heck can I use? He needed to have enough demographics so he can generate his armies and stuff. And for Yundi and the Ernst and Nyrons and others who fought him and others, they needed enough demographics to build their armies to counter him. So you wouldn't. The history requires enough material. So there you have the other way around. A lot of the stories from the Greyhawk history and the lore requires numbers in the hundreds of thousands, many millions.
There's a problem then. I don't think IU's currently has the demographics to take on Firiundi and the Shieldlands and Nyron.
Yeah, but then
the LGG pumped up all the goods numbers.
Yeah,
and IU's eventually will just lose by attrition.
Yeah, but then you have the other way around. IUs has demographics to tap into that are out of this world, literally. Meaning you can say that if you
Yeah.
have a demographics of demons laying around in your backyard, or you can conjure them or summon them or something.
And
Meaning,
undead. I use
yeah,
as
and
all
undead. Meaning
anybody
you can,
kill,
yeah,
you
you can use
Wow.
past demographics. If you can dig up some 10, 20, 30. That's why I introduced old generations and necropolises of undead. Then you can scrape up a half decent army if you can find a few thousand old skeletons and stuff that you can animate, and then
For
you can
every
import.
undead horde and
Yeah,
demon, the
and
other
then you
side has a
yeah, gain in
archmage
a
or
couple of
a cleric
thousand
who can
yeah,
neutralize that.
yeah, angry demons and
That's
stuff,
a
and then you have an army. Yeah,
that's a whole nother discussion on how
yeah.
wars
Hmm.
do not make
Yeah,
sense in
wars.
fantasy settings with super high level characters running around looking like freaking
Yeah.
Well, that
Gandalf and stuff and Aragorn slaughtering everything on the field, right?
yeah,
It's just not
but
realistic, but it's
yeah, but the
fantasy.
war. Yeah, but the war is unrealistic if you make the enemies equally powerful, so to speak. Then the wars make sense. You just make both sides fairly balanced, so to speak. You have some Gandalfs, and then you throw in some demon lords and add some of their power. So you can make that make sense, but you need the demographics. Look at the wars in Lord of the Rings, meaning in order to take the fields out of Minas Tirith, you needed probably a few millions of people in order to sustain just get that number of soldiers. But on the other hand, the good guys used up probably a few tens of thousands of undead on their side to win the battle, but just the other ones. So I think you need to have demographic numbers if you want to tell stories of big epic battles of armies of a few thousand on each side, and I like those. So that's why I need populations in a few millions here and there, so to sustain them.
Yeah.
And that means that I have to give IU some flan, some bandit kingdom numbers, some undead, some demons, whatever, and the surprise factor, and also the willingness to simply ignore all morals, all that stuff, and just drive them hard, so to speak. That's the other thing. So it's possible. You just have to look into the numbers. So I think you can make fantasy warfare make sense. You just have to play with the overall numbers and the power balance, so to speak. If you have Gandalfs, you need demon lords.
You're right. When it comes to battles, that's one thing that I like the new population figures, because with the original figures, you end up with these
don't get
tiny
exactly.
battles.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. You get small little skirmishes of a few hundred on either side, and that's it. Yeah.
That's funny, Tim. Yes, you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And necromancers are really important in Battlefield, because that's just like reuse your soldier material, which makes a lot of sense in war, so to speak. And that gives the evil side maybe IUs doesn't need that many to start with. He can reuse his own force multiple times, and he can reuse the enemy's casualties on his side more too than the good ones are willing to, or able to. So you can make it make sense. And some trolls are useful soldiers. You just make them run and they last long, and they so.
Once again, that's another whole can of worms opening that on actual wars. And how to handle that. So Rich, thanks. What do you have to say in closing here on this discussion?
What I'll do is I'll put those three things you showed. I'll put those files into the general chat of Cannon Fire's Discord.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody wants them, they can grab them.
If you're not on the Discord, here are the links for the Discords. There's Cannon Fire Discord, and here is Greyhawk Events Discord. Please sign up for both.
So I'll do that once we hang up here. I'll do that.
Awesome.
Right away.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thanks for some really, you did a lot of work here. I can respect that completely. Wow.
Yep.
Just thinking it out. And, what I would love for, and I guess Malamoku says it's in that one book, but
you're going to put me OCD in my head, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. So like a Hamlet.
Yeah.
Establishments. How many establishments? A hamlet, a village.
Oh, I have that done. I have that as well.
Okay.
I already have that. It's called a fiefdom generator. that I've shared quite a few times. You click
Oh
on it.
yeah, it's great one. Yeah.
Okay.
You, it tells you, you'd say the size. Do I want a hamlet, a village, a town, or a city? It randomly puts the number of population, tells you how many inns, beekeepers,
Yeah.
Oh wow.
it does that whole calculation. And it tells, if you go back to your Verbobank map,
hmm
it actually tells you the size of the settlement and how much farmland is needed for the peasants. So it'll tell you the diameter of the tamed area. So you can put a village and say this village and the farms around it is about 1 kilometer diameter. And it fits. So you know that Verbobank, even though it looks like it's very, very big, that map you showed, it's really not, because each of those little dots is only
Right. 30
kilometers.
miles.
It's not
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
just saying in perspective to other places, it's filled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
so I already have that for you, Jay. I'll put that up as well. I'll put my
yeah,
FIFA
put that up as well. I think people
put
would
my
love that
FIFA
too. Great.
generator as well.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you guys say in closing for this discussion?
Hey, fiefdom generator. That's interesting because, like, this is my favorite fiefdom generator companion guide.
Okay.
It has a way of breaking down a hex into, like civilized wilderness, borderland area,
Yep.
and how many families are in that area,
Yep.
what the resources are. Gamerly, it's a real easy, simple system. Even has population growth from 1 to 25%. I was just looking at it.
That's cool.
So it takes that into account. So
Yeah.
for domain management, that's always been my go-to source.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the scholarly stuff, it's fun to talk about with y'all. But like someone said in chat, this stuff doesn't come up in the game table.
No, it's for the DM to set up, and
Mhm.
if you do it right, the players will never notice you're doing it,
Yeah,
but they'll feel the effect of it in the
Yep.
campaign.
yeah.
Like you said, you know how tough lore is, right? Lore is in the top 0.1%. It makes you feel good, but you feel it because when you walk around town, I play my NPCs that way. That you're, oh my god, this guy's kicking the. Whenever you're sparring with them, you're just mowing the lawn with these guys, and you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What do you got on closing on this?
Yeah, just want to thank you all for participating in this, because this is the kind of discussion I thrive on, so to speak, to
Yeah.
get me going, get my creative juices going, so to speak. So I think it's great, and hopefully we have given some examples here and there where you can use demographics and this type of thinking in your campaign planning, your world building and stuff like that. And maybe you learn, like, I don't want any of this shit, but maybe that has been useful full insight too, so to speak, depending
That was
on
funny,
whether
yeah.
you want to. Yeah, but it's one of these things that take it or leave it. But I think it's important, if you want, you should know if you want to use this or not, so to speak. That I think, because don't spend energy on something that you don't want in your games. But if you do want it, it's cool to know that it's there in case you're one of these people that maybe this is interesting. I can use this aspect or that or not, so to speak. But I'm a sucker for dragon demographics and other stuff like this. I love it. It's for me, it's really important. I love this as for me to world build. But I know that my players probably, like Rich said, it's one of these, like, 1 or 2 layers deep. The players don't realize it at first, but if it's there, they benefit because the game is deeper. So when they start digging or poking around, that's when it makes sense for them. So
They notice when there's too many ins.
yeah, exactly.
Or
They're not going to notice
Yeah.
how many ins are
Yeah.
nationwide.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
You'll also find out, hey, I can't get magic items here because there's no magic.
Exactly. You need to find a city big enough. How big of a city do you need in order to support a magic shop?
Yeah.
8,000. I saw a website that had the numbers to that, but to me it's too low. I think more than 8,000. Yeah, but that depends on how prevalent magic is in your campaign too, versus demographics, meaning how many people do you have in order to breed in order to get an archmage, and how effective can archmage and others be in order to create in creating magic items. And so it's kind of ties in. Demographics is one part of, and then your magic status in your campaign, so to speak, that's the other part. And you take demographics times your magic value or modifier in your campaign, and then you get the number of magic people you need per magic shop. So yep, you can run the numbers on that too.
Shout outs, Rich. What's going on?
Well, like I said, I've got this article going into the Grey Grimoire
Okay.
that's coming out. So it's a maritime article. Um, Gary and I, hopefully, once Christmas comes around, we're going to work a little bit on Radagast City.
Awesome.
So based on my campaign with my guys, and then I'm running Mike through a campaign. I'm running some of my other friends through another campaign. I'm in Dale's campaign where I'm a Dwarven Paladin Bard, possibly the worst dual class combination in Castle and Crusades, but
It doesn't sound
and
good.
then obviously I play Lord Brez and Amy's campaign, so he's doing well. He slept with Rudd recently, so that's always good.
Nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So this is
Coming
gonna
up
be
in the world. Yeah.
yeah. So it was a little bit of a step down for Lord Brezin because she's, but it's okay. She
Oh,
she
that's
asked nicely.
awesome.
She said, "All right, I'll sleep with you."
That's cool,
Ah.
man.
Uh,
Well, Rich, thank you so very much for participating today. I look forward to getting. I already have those. I look forward to getting that fiefdom generator. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'll
That's
put that.
awesome. That's really really neat. Mike, what's going on?
everything Rich just said. And hey, if you go on Greyhawk, I have a new quiz I just threw together.
Oh, I
Oh.
love those
Geography starting with
quizzes.
the letter G.
Uh-oh.
So let's see how well you know the map.
Hmm.
Nice. Good one. Fantastic. Anna, what's up?
I took a couple of days off the other one and started doing heraldry. So there will be a batch of heraldry coming fairly soon,
Nice.
and so on. And I've also moved my GIS project into the next phase. I'm going to write a blog post what that means and the different how this project is unfolding, and spread maps of, for instance, demographics and stuff is one main reason, one of the major reasons that I want to do GIS and stuff. So that is moving into the next phase. So those are the big things, so to speak. So, and then there's some more settlement descriptions and stuff in the works too. Yep.
So from our discussion on Sunday, I found this because I wanted it and I got it.
Oh,
I
awesome!
found
You
one.
got
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I
Did you
got it.
get the whole big thing with 30 other stuff, or
No,
did you
I
find
just
it
I,
by
I
itself?
just got this in the book form
Okay,
because it's
good.
the one I
Yep.
wanted. So got
Awesome.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So tomorrow night we start a new adventure. It is an adventure from dungeon number 6. It's modified, so it'll be 2 sessions. Bristanum's Cairn. This is a group out of Greyhawk, Iron Fury. So they're going into the Cairn Hills as someone who is very well known in Greyhawk in my campaign, and infamous for a certain crown, is going to send one of his fanatics on a mission to recover or go to this cairn, and we'll see what happens from there. It's got some really neat things to it, and yeah, here it is, Bristanum's Cairn. You never know what you find under a big rock, and this is it. It wasn't that long, so I expanded it a little bit. That's tomorrow. Now this one's wrong, okay, banner wise. But we're going to do, it's called A Friend Indeed, and it's Friday morning at 9 a.m. We're going to have another micro session. I'm still not back to work. Tim's off, and he's got 3 of his players, so we're going to have another micro session Friday morning, 9 a.m., okay? Just note that. Friday, 9 a.m. What level? This one is, that's 6th, 7th, and 8th level, 6th and 7th level, Tim, for the next 2 weeks. Bristanum's Cairn. All right, so a friend indeed, it'll be called. That's Tim. There'll be a Gavin on Sunday. I haven't even gotten to that, and we'll start the week up again next week.
Yeah, we'll have a mapping stream on Friday as
night.
usual.
Very cool.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. All right, last call. Exclamation point drawing. You get your choice of 2, including a compilation book and then an adventure book. So if you wanted Scarlet Brotherhood and Cult of the Reptile God, I got a new recent shipment in from Patrick. So I have stuff that is almost as big as I am. So
Oh, wow.
I strongly recommend the Scarlet Brotherhood book.
yes, I imagine you would there, Lord Breslin. That's awesome. So look, these are just 2 piles in itself. So here we go. I'm gonna close this out. Let's see who wins. today. And then we have a Gamescape 3D giveaways tomorrow, and then I'll probably do a Reaper miniatures for those who do not have a 3D printer tomorrow. So we'll have 3 giveaways tomorrow night. Here we go. I'm going to close this out. Let's see who wins. Closing it out. Winner, Deldawath. Deldawath 73. I saw you on. All right. Your choice of 2.
Congratulations.
1 compilation maximum. All right. So I thought I saw Deldawath on.
Yeah, he was there before.
Yeah, should be
I don't know if
here.
he's still on, but he was there
He
before.
should be on still. Yeah, he's on. All right, get with me, Deldawath, in chat. Yep, just let me know what you want. I got a whole bunch of X series. I got another Isle of Dread, Cult of Reptile God. My God, White Plume Mountain. Like I said, Scarlet Brotherhood. I still have multiple Treasures of Greyhawks, Showcants, multiple of those. All sorts of great stuff in this pile. Just get with me and we'll get that sent right out. We're going to raid into Phoenixy because he's doing, they're still on their 12 days long of fundraiser, so we'll raid into them. But thank you, Rich. That was a really great discussion. Anna and Mike, thank you very much. See you tomorrow night, 7:30. Normal time start this week for the game. And everyone have a great night.
Night all.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Did I hit any wrong? Oh, I hit my first wrong button of the night.
Oh, okay.
That was my first
Yeah,
wrong
see?
one.
The only one, too.
Yeah, that was. So see you all
so
tomorrow for a fun. It'll be starting it off a cool adventure with some cool terrain already set. Raid. I'm gonna set this up. There we go. It says I'm already raiding if you're not. Oh, there it goes. Thank you, Mr. Looker, for the follow. All right, nice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you tomorrow night. Make sure that worked.
Yes, it worked.
All right, give me a sec. Yeah, I'll let my dog back in. Give me a moment. Be
Yep.
right back.
All right, very cool.